Motions to open the meeting in the roll call. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Councilor Calorio,
Here.
Councilor King, Councilor King,
I think he's frozen.
Councilor King,
Here we go.
Councilor
It wouldn't let
Morocco,
me in
Here.
for some reason.
Councilor Rivera, Councilor Rose,
Here.
Councilor Rosen,
Here.
Councilor Russell,
Here.
Councilor Toomey,
Here.
Councilor Wally, Councilor Wally,
Here.
and Mayor Petty.
Here. Okay, we're going to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Then we'll just have, keep our thoughts and prayers with Councilor Rivera and her family for her son Zach, who passed away. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. So with that, I have a start off the proclamation. Whereas to address prevention, protection, and prosecution of human trafficking, the United States passed the Trafficking Victims Protection Act in 2000. And on November 21st, 2011, Massachusetts Governor Patrick signed House Bill 3808, an act relative to the commercial exploitation of people, which went into effect February 19th, 2012. Whereas September 2017, the United States signed the Voluntary Compact on Elimination of Sexual Exploitation and Abuse, which was introduced by the UN Secretary General and sets out specific commitments by signatory member states to prevent sexual exploitation and abuse, to hold perpetrators accountable, and to support victims. Whereas the City of Worcester created a task force, Worcester Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation, in October 2012, including the city's Division of Public Health, law enforcement, hospitals, colleges, community organizations, recovery organizations, and a contract was signed between the City of Worcester and the Living in Freedom Together LIFT, agreeing to provide ongoing support to victims of commercial and sexual exploitation and sex trafficking in the locale, and thus making Worcester home to the first survivor-led substance use disorder program for victims of sex trafficking in this country through LIFT. And whereas, according to the 2020 U.S. State Department of Trafficking in Persons report, the United States considers trafficking in persons, human trafficking, and modern slavery to be interchangeable and umbrella terms that refer to both sex and labor trafficking. And whereas Worcester's geographical position within New England, the United States poses a high risk of trafficking, there's a general lack of awareness of abuse in our region, and there are limited services for victims, which results in under-identification of victims. And whereas there is a myriad of challenges to identify victims, such as one, low public awareness of crime of human trafficking, widespread myths, misconceptions, and misunderstandings about the federal definition of human trafficking. Two, the majority of victims do not self-identify or proactively seek help. Three, human trafficking in its essence is a crime designed not to be detected. And four, there are a myriad of reasons why victims often cannot or will not leave a trafficking situation. Now, therefore, I, Mayor Joseph M. Petty, do hereby proclaim January 5th, 2021 as National Human Trafficking Awareness Month in the City of Worcester, to encourage all residents to recognize and participate in observance. And I think, Nico, AJ, we have Nikki Bell, founder and chief executive officer of Living in Freedom, on the phone, I believe. You have her?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I'll unmute Nicole right now.
And Nicole, here's your proclamation. I'll be seeing you next week. They hand that to you, I think, or do a Zoom. I'm not sure what we're doing, but are you there, Nikki?
Yes, I'm here. I just want to thank the city for its commitment to making sure survivors have the support that they need and its dedication to holding perpetrators accountable. So thank you, and I will see you next week.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for all the work you do, too. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is approval of the minutes. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera, Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally, and Mayor Petty.
Yes. Just suspend the rules. Let's go to appointments first, in case
Yes.
anybody's on the line for appointments. Motion to suspend the rules and go to 9.1A, Transfer of Information Communication relative to the appointment of Natalie Turner to the Parks Commission for a term to expire on April 30th, 2023. Natalie, thank you for your service on behalf of the city and Worcester City Council and City Manager. Thank you. And also transmitting information communication over the appointment of Guillermo Creamer to the Human Rights Commission with a term to expire on April 30th, 2023. Guillermo, thank you for your service, and on behalf of the council, city manager, myself, and the people of Worcester. With that, we can file those two. Motions to file. Roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera, Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally, and Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next item up is recommend the appointment of James Delage to the Accessibility Advisory Commission to a term to expire on May 31st, 2024. James, thank you for your service and appreciate your time. We can do a roll call on that. Roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera, Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Council Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. I can recommend the appointment of Holly Jones to the Conservation Commission, term to expire on September 30th, 2023. Holly, thank you for your service. Much appreciated. And roll call.
Council Bergman,
Yes.
Council Calorio,
Yes.
Council King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Council Rivera, Council Rose,
Yes.
Council Rosen,
Yes.
Council Russell,
Yes.
Toomey,
Yes.
Council Wally, and Mayor Petty.
Yes. With that, we'll go back to public participation. A person may speak for no more than 2 minutes on any items occurring on the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, did we approve the minutes yet?
Yes, we did.
Okay, good. All right. I didn't have that checked off. Thanks.
Okay. AJ, how many people have, you think?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Looks like we have about 27 people in the queue right now. I'm not sure how many of them are for speaking, but it looks like a good number. So let's hear. The first person I can identify is an Andrea Sullivan. I'll unmute Andrea now.
I have nothing to say at this point.
Thank you. All right, with that being the case, the next person I can identify is a Benjamin Desjardins.
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Ben Desjardins. I live in Worcester, Massachusetts. I have a comment on item 7A. I will not mince words. Every member of this council has seen the violence carried out at the hands of our police officers this year. With rubber bullets, tear gas, and fists and nightsticks, our neighbors were attacked in their homes and beaten on their front steps in June, and the police union serves to protect these officers from any consequences of their crimes against the community. As the city council enters executive session to strategize ahead of their negotiations with the police union, I would implore them to act in ways that serve the whole community. In June and in a recent meeting in December, I brought up an option in this meeting regarding municipally and privately funded police detail, and the police union's own published figures show that Worcester net spends over $3 million a year on municipal police detail at nearly $50 an hour. For this payroll outlay, the city could create over 50 new full-time jobs at a living wage and still save over $1.4 million over current expenditures without even touching police detail work with in these times of mass unemployment and economic uncertainty. Worcester has the rare opportunity to both provide good paying work for our jobless neighbors and to save millions of dollars doing it. We simply have to be willing to create these opportunities for those most able to benefit, rather than continuing to enrich the six-figure salaries of 90% of the city's top paid employees. I've emailed to each councilor and the mayor a copy of this statement with the figures I've cited, and I ask you to act on behalf of the citizens you are elected to represent as you prepare for this meeting. Thank you.
Okay, AJ, next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I can identify is Bobby Hazelton. I'll unmute Mr. Hazelton now.
Thank you, AJ. I'm just here to, first I'd like to thank the city manager, Augustus, and Commissioner Fink for bringing forward 9.8. I'm just here to, I think, along with many others, just to find out some more details about item number 9.8, the plans for the Deputy Field and Industrial Advisory Commission. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. All right, so with that being the case, I have a Bridget Garnett. I'll unmute Bridget now.
I don't have any questions at this time.
Thank you. The next person I can identify is a Brian Urato. I'll unmute Brian now.
I have nothing to identify at this time.
With that being the case, we're going to move on to some call-in users. I just unmuted the first call-in user. If everyone on a phone could please state their name, city, or residence, we'll let you know if you're the person we can hear.
Suzanne Burke.
I think it was a Suzanne Burke.
Yes, it is. Suzanne Burke from Saxon Road. Lifelong resident of the city. I'm calling in support for the Save Duffy Field group. I know there's an agenda item. I'm a little surprised that the agreement on the advisory committee has not happened yet. I don't know of anybody who's been requested or invited to be part of that committee. And I'm surprised that we already have a company involved for a design of the park, and to our knowledge, there's been no agreement as to what is really going to happen with the park. But so I think the city appears to kind of jump the gun on that. The other concern I have is that the athletic director of the Worcester Public Schools is apparently going to be part of the group, and again, this is a public park. This is not a Worcester Public Schools piece of land. This belongs to the city, given to the city by the Wetherell family. So that looks like it's very contradictory to the goal of really honestly looking at the park itself and the importance of preserving and all the environmental issues that are going on at the park, which again, I just want people to be aware, there is wetland in there and there are vernal pools. So there are definitely issues of conservation. And I hope that issue is forefront in the upcoming meetings, whenever that's going to be. I don't see a timeline for those either. So again, Save Duffy Field, we have 600 people who are opposed to turning it into an athletic complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's see here. So I just unmuted another call-in user. Could everyone please state their names? We'll let you know if you're the person we can hear. Not hearing anyone, I'll move on to the next call-in user. Once again, if everyone could please state your names, I'll let you know if you're the person we can hear.
Chief Lavoie.
Chief Lavoie, okay, thank you. Once again, could everyone please state their names? I'll let you know if you're the person we can hear.
William O'Connell.
William O'Connell.
Hello, I'm William O'Connell, a lifelong resident of Worcester. I've lived in the Newton Square area since 1977, initially on Franconia Street, now on Richmond Ave. I'm a member of Save Duffy Field. I want to agree with all of the points that the previous speaker made, and my wife and I would bring our children, who are now in their 30s, over to Duffy Field to play very frequently when they were young. And we now bring our granddaughter, who's 3 years old, over there on a regular basis to play. I would like to see it maintained as a public park. I would be opposed to putting a turf field there. I think that would limit significantly the availability of the field to be used by the people who live in the neighborhood. I'm also wondering about the advisory group that we were told was going to be pulled together, and will there be neighborhood residents involved in that advisory group? They should be. So again, I'm just in support of Save Duffy Field, and hope that people who reside in the neighborhood really have some legitimate and real input into this process. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see. Once again, I've just unmuted another call-in user. Could everyone please state their names? Not hearing anyone. I will move on to the next speaker. Could everyone please state their names?
Eva Johnson.
Eva Johnson?
Yeah, hi. I'm calling to support Ben, I believe his name was, in his opinions laid out on 7A. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I just unmuted another call-in user. Could you all please state your names? Not hearing anyone. I'll move on to the next call-in speaker. Could you all please state your names? Not hearing anyone. I'll move on to the next call-in user. Could you all please state your names?
Hello?
I heard a hello.
I don't know if I'm on. Am I on?
You're on.
Oh, okay. My name is Sheila Brenner. I live in Worcester, around the corner from Duffy Field, Duffy Park, Wetherell Field, whatever it's called. And I'm very concerned that neighbors won't be able to have a say in what's going to happen. I'm concerned that a temporary transformation for Doherty Sports will ruin our enjoyment of the park, and I really would like the neighborhood who have shown up to clean and take care of the park to be part of the plan. I don't want Duffy to be changed so that it's primarily a high school sports field and not a neighborhood park.
Okay, thank you. AJ?
Thank you. All right, so once again, I just unmuted another call-in user. Could you all please state your names?
Susan Swanson.
Susan Swanson, we heard you.
Hi, thank you. I am speaking to agenda item 12 in terms of the Columbus Park East-West Trail and the Hillside Beach area. I'll make this short. I don't know what is going to happen with the removal of the Hillside Beach, whether it is going to be removed or not. But I also want to say that for those that we've lost at the beach, that one way of honoring them and respecting them would actually to make sure, as the city has indicated they will, create opportunities for swimming lessons for the kids in the neighborhood area of Columbus Park and Worcester Housing Authority. I know that the city has really made great strides in trying to make swimming lessons available for the kiddos. But given the conversations that we've had with regard to Hillside Beach, I would just want to underscore that we make sure that we revisit that particular topic to ensure that all the kids in the neighborhood do have access to swimming lessons. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, next one, AJ.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I just unmuted another call-in user. Could you all please state your names?
Nick Joshua.
Nick, go ahead. You should name and say your residence.
Hello, I would like to support Sean Rose's proposal for a BMX and motocross track in Worcester. I believe the kids in the city of Worcester deserve a track to ride in. There's no track in Worcester at all to ride in. I fully support Sean in his proposal, and most of my friends do too. Thank you.
Thank you. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once again, I just unmuted another call-in user. Could you all state your
It would
names?
really just take away from the kids who get to play at.
All right, so let's see here. Moving on. We have Cesar Valiente.
Bring your phone, like you put it on the charger, please.
No comment at this time.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
All right, with that being the case, I have Dan Arnold.
Yes, hi, Dan Arnold, 74 Brownell Street, Worcester. In regard to the Duffy Field matter, and just questioning why the athletic director of Worcester Public Schools has been given a seat at the table when this is not a school matter. This is a parks matter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see here. The next person I'm able to identify is Fred Taylor. I'll unmute Mr. Taylor now. Mr. Taylor?
Hello?
Hey, Fred, go ahead.
All right, good evening. I'm only here to observe tonight. I have nothing to comment on.
Okay, thank you.
The next person I find is Johanna Hampton. Okay, let's see. The next person is James Scott.
Hello, I'm not sure why I'm not getting a video, and maybe everyone else is but me. I want to support the community of the Lakeside Apartments. I had a short something I wanted to read to you all, but I'm not sure how much time we get.
You get 2 minutes.
Right now. I don't live there in the Lakeside Apartments, but my friends live there. I've gone there and I visited. There's a huge fence and a locked gate with a big padlock and a big chain that holds that. I see no point for it at all. Kids walk from the other side, walk right by the lake. There's a playground. The kids can't access the playground. It's just a constant reminder of inequality and, in fact, I would call it racism, that the kids of that big apartment complex that live right by a lake can't get to the lake. Do we not trust them where we trust someone with white skin that walks in from the other side? And I don't mean to reduce it to an entirely racial thing, but it is predominantly one race or the other, on one side of the fence or the other. It says in big red letters, it says beach closed, and it just it appears threatening and just disempowering to anybody that would be there. Kids could climb over it if they wanted to. And I know there's a big discussion and a whole thing in process about the beach, progress toward destroying or recreating the beach and all, but apart from that, with 200 yards from these apartments, there's a beautiful playground, and the kids can't get to it. So, Mr. Mayor Mayor Petty, I would ask you to tear down this fence. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, next speaker, AJ.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I can identify is a John Cove. I've just unmuted Mr. Cove.
Thank you very much. How you guys doing tonight? Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, great. Hey, I live over at 9 Greenbrier Lane here off of Richmond Ave, and it's a major concern of a flooding area, flood zone. I've talked to Sean Rose about it. It's been a major issue over here, and I want to thank him and the Parks Department so far for the help that they've done down at the end of St. Paul Street, I believe. And I want to thank the DPW and Dave Harris, I think is the guy, but I know they've put in a lot of work down there, and my property is definitely majorly impacted by that. And, you know, I understand the Duffy Field thing on both sides of the fence. You know, if there's some way that we could possibly put in a retention pond down that way to alleviate more, because it is a ginormous drain that feeds the Beaver Brook, and the whole neighborhood off of Richmond Ave here is heavily impacted. Now, I know other areas of the neighborhood in the city are, But I just wanted to put in my 2 cents, but also to thank the departments that have worked on that. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. AJ?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I can identify is a John True.
Yes, hi.
Go ahead. What's your name and city of residence?
John True, 49 Winifred Ave, Worcester. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to the council.
Do we lose you?
Mr. Mayor, he is still there. Let me see here.
Hi.
Go ahead.
Can you hear
John.
me?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
Okay, thank you. John True, 49 Winifred Ave, Worcester, Mass. Proud resident of the Newton Square area for the past 55 years. I'm a booster of the city, and I regularly point out to city residents and anyone else that will listen what a great place it is to live, to grow up in, raise a family, and enjoy the wonderful resources that the city has to offer. It's livable, affordable, and safe for a city of 185,000 people. I, along with other neighbors, are watching the Newton Square, the area of Duffy Field, and trying to figure out why a park that was given by a Wetherill family that identifies clearly the utilization as a park and not an athletic field for public schools. Wetherill family, and unfortunately, I've seen this before as a city resident with Green Hill Park, and the Green family having an issue with the way the city used the parkland. So I think the city wants to really pay attention on this one. The other thing is I was over there last week with a few counselors and the area folks, and there's pools of water over there. There's ponds, there's wetlands. The Conservation Commission clearly identifies that. I think if the city wants to improve some parks, the Newton Square tennis courts have been dilapidated for the last 10 years, and there is a Doherty tennis team, and I think that Doherty tennis team would be served by having the nice courts, as well as all the neighbors and residents, and pickleball courts would also are popular, and that would be helpful. I'm sorry. The last thing I would say is that as Ms. Burke identified, over 650 people have signed the petition in the neighborhood saying this is it's a park. It's not a public field for the Worcester Public Schools. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. And again, this is a great city to live in. I'm thankful to have been able to spend my time here. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, next speaker, AJ.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I can identify is a Louis Mignona. Louis? Let's see, not hearing Louis. I'll move on to, looks like Malt Schultzman. Let's see.
Schlitzman, hello, am I coming through?
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. I live immediately adjacent to the park in question. I have a 16-month-old who first experienced water at Hillside Beach, and it violates the land deed that the park was signed over to the city if you remove this beach. The beach was stipulated in the land deed, and if the city continually ignores the deeds that these parks are given to the city under, nobody is going to be giving land to the city anymore for parks. You are shooting yourselves in the foot in order to serve the interests of rich developers who either implicitly or explicitly are instructing you to exclude the Black and brown residents of the Lakeside apartment complex. And that's not cool, guys. Like, I made a holiday for this city, and I want the city to be decent to the people who live in it. And if City Hall continuously engages in this indecent behavior, I'm going to start showing up more often. to your meetings, and I'm going to pass petitions and make you spend your evenings talking about my asinine ideas. So, do the right thing, guys. Come on.
Okay, thank you. AJ, next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I can identify is Megan Sherry. I'll unmute Megan now.
Hi, I'm just in also support of Duffy Field and interested in what the 9.8 meeting of the, creating a meeting for neighbors to have input. I'm also interested in 11C, D, and F, and that's all I have for comments tonight, just paying attention and being interested. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next person I can identify is Pat Falcone. Just unmuted Pat now. Let's see here. Not hearing Pat. We can go to, it's like a Peter Ammer. Just unmuted Peter now. See, not hearing Peter. Not hearing Peter. We can move on to Ruth Seward.
Hi, this is Ruth Seward, 22 Suburban Road, Worcester. I live very close to Weatherall Park / Duffy Field, and I'm interested to hear about item 9.8 on the agenda tonight, and just trying to make sure that the citizens that are interested in the fate of Weatherall Park are duly represented in the process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And this looks like the last person I can identify is Koa Kennedy.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I just wanted to call in to in support of maintaining Duffy Field as a park. You know, I live on 3 Jermaine Street, and our kids have gone to Midland Street there, and for many years they've used that area for their race of education, of which you know, I have the pleasure to attend. I also have a scout troop where we use the park as our meetings place during COVID, and just overall, I just feel like you know, if you were to modify that into a turf field or something other than an open space where all can enjoy it and be a part of, it would be a real shame, and it would really take away, you know, the joy of the resident around the field itself. That's all I need to have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that brings us to the end of that, AJ, or?
That's correct, Mr. Mayor. That's everyone I can identify.
Okay. So I want to thank everybody for participating. Our next item we'll come back to, which is executive session. We'll do that at the end of the meeting. So we have petitions, 8A to 8B. We're going to refer to the Public Works Committee. And on a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mara Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. 8C to 8K, and also that's going to refer to Traffic and Parking Committee, and also 8L and 8M. We'll set a hearing for January 12th for a private location on Thorndike Road and Bellevue Road, and on Lamartine Street. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mara Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Before we move on, Councilor Bergman to point out that we have a moment of silence for Brian Buckley, who passed away this past week. Brian served the city of Worcester with distinction, and He was a very well-respected attorney here in the city of Worcester and did a lot of work. He by the Jess Piquette Little League too, and so my heart goes out to his family and to his friends. So we have a quick moment of silence for Brian. I don't know if you want to. Thank you.
Very flattering pictures of everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilor King?
Yeah, there's a community member on the phone who did not have the opportunity to speak. She tried to. I guess she had some sort of issue. Okay. I wonder if we could suspend the rules.
Sure.
Nellie Medina.
Okay, Ms. Medina, and is AJ still there? Nico, can you do it?
Mr. Mayor, I can try to identify Ms. Medina. Is she on the phone, Councilor King, or is she on the electronic device? Councilor King, you're on mute.
I believe she's on the phone.
Okay, well, I'm going to try to unmute some of the callers and see if we can identify.
Okay.
Oops. She's a 973 number, 973.
Councilor King, unfortunately, we cannot see the numbers. We just see the calling users by the number, the number they call in.
Why don't you open everybody up for the phone? Nico just asked them to speak.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try to unmute some of the speakers, some of the calling users. It might be a little distracting, but we're going to try to do the best we can trying to identify.
One thing I noticed with him, different around here, he likes, probably likes Lolia.
I heard her in there.
So what I'm going to ask Ms. Medina if she can actually press *3 on her phone, and that will hopefully identify her. Ms. Medina, with your phone, if you don't mind pressing *3.
Okay, Nico.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'm not able to identify her at this time. Councilor King, I don't know if you can get her on the cell phone and put her on speakerphone. That's the option. Otherwise, if I unmute everybody, it would probably be distracting. Yeah.
Councilor King, can you try that up? You're on mute.
Thank you. All right, she's on.
Okay, go ahead, Nelly.
Hello, Mr. Mayor.
Can you hear?
Yep. Hello.
Yes, we can hear.
My name is Nelly Medina. I'm a resident of Worcester. I live adjacent to the Hillside Beach at Lakeside Apartments, and I'm calling with concern about the removal of Hillside Beach. The city of Worcester can complete the boardwalk project without replacing the wetlands at Hillside Beach. Also, I believe that I wanted to point out that the boardwalk will be an opportunity to stop its first operations, and I doubt that the folks planning this project considered it. But the trails and fences in the woods mean very different things to us. We need to make sure that the people are not fenced into a chute. With the continuance, it seems likely that the city that you will be reaching out to the community organizations. We're hoping for support in this matter before going ahead and taking the beach away without consulting the community. I'm also calling in reference to the gate at Lakeside that is prohibiting our children from accessing the park for the last 3 years. Matt Wally has said that he will only open up the gate after the the demolition of the beach is complete. However, that is unacceptable. Our children cannot wait another 2 years before accessing their local park. I also want to point out that this is a natural living organism that you're planning to destroy for an amphitheater, and that I'm hoping that you'll consider the agreement when the deed was given over to the city, and that was to utilize the beach for community consumption, not for greed or to block the residents from the Lakeside Apartments from a natural resource, the only one that we have. And I also want to point out that the school, Columbus Park Preparatory Academy, is full of poison, and that taking away the only natural, clean resource that we have will be unconscionable. So I ask the City Council to please consider halting all operations at Hillside Beach until we can consult community in the spring when it's safe to do so that we're all involved in this process. I also want to ask that an investigation go into see what private interests are connected to City Council in this matter, because it seems to me that there's a lot of to destroy this beach, and I want to understand the urgency of this matter. Thank you so much for your time. And again, I ask you to allow Hillside Beach to remain as is at profit for the deed transfer. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we're going to go on to, thank you, Christian. Thank you. Okay. So we are back to the agenda. We did 9.1, 9.2. We are on 9.8A, transmitting information communication relative to the Duffy Field Master Plan. Then from there, we'll go to Hillside Beach, because I know we have people waiting for that too who are listening. If that's okay with everyone. So, Mr. Manager, do you want to give us a quick recap on the Duffy Field and the plan that you put forth, why we have the two people, Bob and David Shea, on that? Go ahead. Mr. Manager?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the recommendation that I've sent on to the council is reflective of several orders that the council filed and sent to me following the large community meeting that was held a couple months ago, where many of us were on that call for a number of hours, where we heard input from the community. And I think out of that community conversation, there was the idea of putting a citizens committee together to look at what options could be developed to meet some of the goals that were put out by various folks from the community. Some of the folks who wanted to keep Duffy Field largely the same, but maybe were open to some improvements, whether they be additional walkways or enhancements to the playground, as well as folks who wanted to look and see if there were opportunities for other athletic needs for the community to be accommodated there. So the council sent me an order saying, let's look at putting together a community committee that could work with the Parks Department and a consultant. So the consultant, you know, I heard somebody refer to that as some kind of like putting the horse before the cart. That really, the consultant is there to advise the citizens committee about what the different options that they might explore. Because as people mentioned, there are concerns about wetlands, there are concerns about, you know, various issues in and around that park area, and we want the Citizens Advisory Committee to have expert advice about what is possible and what isn't possible, what would fit, what wouldn't fit, what would be environmentally appropriate and what would not, so that this group can make recommendations back to the administration and to the city council based on facts, based on expert guidance, so that if there are a set of recommendations that can come back, they're recommendations that we could act on and that are informed by this expert advice. And the goal would be to have, as was mentioned, neighbors, abutters, folks from the Save Duffy Field Committee on this group that could help try to come up with a set of recommendations that work, to see if we can find a consensus for some improvements there that, you know, take into account the many competing ideas and suggestions. That alone will only be a set of recommendations that come back to the administration and then from me back to the council. So there are multiple steps before anything happens. This committee coming together and having a conversation and exploring options with the support of the consultant over the next couple of months would be an effort to see what could be recommended, if anything. And then nothing will happen until I make a recommendation to the city council, and then the council in its wisdom will either accept the recommendation or not accept it or modify it as they see fit, and then move forward or not, depending on what is presented. So this is just to continue the conversation and see if we can find common ground as a community and as a neighborhood. And so the reason I didn't put appointees on there is because I wanted the council's approval first on the committee, and then I will reach out, and I've asked for some input from the district councilor and others about who might be on there. And we will approach those folks and invite them to be part of the committee once the council gives me the okay to go ahead and create the committee. I didn't want to invite people to be on a committee before the council approved the ability to create the committee. So I'm trying to do this in a sequential, logical way, and that's what's before the council tonight, is a recommendation based on your request to me to create a community-based committee.
Okay, well done. So okay, Councilor Rose first, what?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was also mentioned in there about who was going to be included on the committee, and I just wanted to say that every person who reached out to me asking to be part of the committee was forwarded on to Commissioner Antonelli and the administration as potential people to serve as this advisory group. There are several people who reached out who were on the Preserve the Save Duffy side. There were several people who were out there looking at various interests of improving and renovating the park. So I think it's a very balanced group of individuals that could advise to get something done there and to find some common ground, or potentially not, depending on what comes back from the consultant. So I didn't want anybody to think that I didn't forward their information or that they were left out or whatever it may be. It actually ended up being, ironically, a pretty balanced group of people with various interests who recommended or who asked to be a part of that advisory group. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, you want to speak again? Did you wait or no?
No.
No. Okay. Councilor Cora?
Thank you. Through the chair to the city manager, just have a couple of questions and comments. So this group, once you formulate it, it appears to me that it's going to be a 2 or 3 month process, correct? Is that
Mr. Manager?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to the council. Yes, my hope is that it would be a fairly expeditious effort, not something that would drag on. So, 60 to 90 days or so for them to hopefully come back with any recommendations they might have.
Okay, also too, so through the chair to the city manager as well. So the forming of the committee, which I did hear some concerns when the people were speaking tonight, and I've heard them from my constituents as well. From what I am gathering, just my sort of what the people that I am surrounded by, they're concerned that people outside the neighborhood will be on this committee when they have no vested interest in the park itself. So and I don't know what names are submitted, and I don't know if they submitted a little bio of like what their expertise were, because I do know there's a lot of people that I know that have high levels of expertise in whether it's environmental or whether it's in city planning. I mean, there's some very bright people that have a lot of interest in this project. So to the city manager through the chair, so when they submitted their names via Councilor Rose, I'm assuming, did they give you a kind of a little background so you know how to balance this? And when will you be calling the people to put them on this committee?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, to the councilor, if the council acts on this recommendation tonight, my hope would be later this week, early next week, to start calling folks and inviting them to be on the committee. And assuming folks say yes and we get the full group together, then they can start working with Commissioner Antonelli and the consultant to begin meeting and going through that process. Many of the folks I recognize, because I know many of the folks, but a lot of the people who called in are people who are going to be invited to be on that committee. And so I do think it's going to be very representative of the neighbors, abutters, stakeholders, but there will be people who are not immediate abutters. There are other people who participated in that community meeting who have interests and ideas and suggestions about Duffy Field, and we are going to invite their ideas to the conversation as well.
Just a couple more quick questions. Just curiosity, how many people submitted their names? So is it, 10, 20, 30, through the chair to the city manager?
I'll be honest with you, I don't know what total number, and maybe Council Rose can mention that, but I think, and I stand to be correct, I think we were looking at 7 or 8 people on the committee. Again, trying to keep it a manageable size so that we can get things done, and but enough people that represents all the different kind of points of view. I don't know if the councilor has some feedback on how many names he got.
The chair, through the chair to Councilor Clorio, I believe that there were 13 or 14 individuals who reached out to me. I don't know if there are people who directly to Commissioner Antonelli or whoever. I can speak to 13 or 14 individuals who came to me with varying expertise. So I would say the vast majority of them are people who live in and around the park.
Thank you. And through the chair to the city manager, I understand that. I understand that. When they first proposed this, when we were at the meeting, at the virtual meeting, I think it was a little unclear, and I'm glad to hear Councilor Rose did get as many people as he did that reached out to him. But I don't think the vehicle of what you should do or who you should reach out to was that clear. So, but if you feel that you've that the people, maybe give it another day or so, maybe even, and see if anybody else maybe are listening tonight or will want to reach out to either yourself, the city manager, or to Councilor Rose, and so they can participate in the park, because I know that it's a very passionate. I've spent several times down there walking the trails, picking up trash, doing some things with the neighborhood. And this is a very passionate group with their green space, and I commend them for all that they do, because, we don't get people that want to spend their Saturdays or their afternoons cleaning up trash. And let me tell you, we uncovered records from probably 1980s. Nothing really collectible, though. I mean, a lot of, asphalt and shingles and a lot of different variety of things in that field that hasn't been looked at for a while. So it's good to hear that we're on the right track here. I look forward to hearing some of these recommendations come out of this group, and I appreciate your answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Council Quinn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question regarding the number of folks who will be participating through the administration. In the narratives that were provided to us, it indicated 6. And I'm just wondering, is that including the city officials? Does that number include Commissioner Antonelli and Athletic Director Shea, or is that 6 in addition to?
Mr. Manager?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, 6 in addition to.
Okay. And I just want to say I really look forward to this moving forward, and hoping that we can come to a fair resolution in this. I too have spent some time down there over the last few days, and clearly there's a lot of investors' interest here, particularly by the community and by our students that need a place to be. I'm just wondering what's the time frame we're looking here? Like, what's the projected end game here? Are we talking 2 months, a month, 2 weeks,
Mr. Manager?
years? What?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, my hope is that the committee can come back between 60 and 90 days with recommendations that could move forward. So we want to keep things moving, keep the conversation moving. And again, I would mention that there's going to be 3 times as many citizens on this committee as there are city officials. And the goal, in the conversations Council Colorio just mentioned, ideas came about walking paths that some of the abutters wanted, some improvements to the existing playground that could be made. This is the opportunity to have all those conversations. This is the vehicle to come up with those ideas and recommendations. So it's not just about the athletic fields. That may be part of the conversation, but all the other things that have been talked about, many of which by the abutters and neighborhoods, this is the vehicle to have those ideas vetted with the advice and the guidance of the consultant, what's doable, what isn't doable based on wetlands, the space available, et cetera, and what can come out that is value added to the abutters and to the entire community.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, if we could just explain the folks who may not understand what happens, what's the Parks and Recreations Commission's role in this as we move forward?
Sure. What I expect, Mr. Manager, is you're going to come back within 60 to 90 days, like you said. We're going to report out to the council, and we'll probably have, usually the Parks Commission has working with Robbie Antonelli and probably Sean Rosen's committee will have some public hearings on that. Or Robbie Antonelli would have a public hearing on a design plan. And from there, we'll take input and change that. Mr. Manager, that.
No, I think that's right. And whatever comes out, assuming that most recommendations that might come out are going to have a price tag associated with it, we're going to have to come up with how that's done and when that's done, and that will require the city council's action. So there is a safety valve. Nothing's going to happen without the council action, and that's going to be a public vote, and that's going to be, the ability for people to call in and weigh in and be heard in order for loan authorizations or appropriations to be made to execute on any recommendations that come forward. So there's a number of steps between now and anything happening, if anything happens, and there's a lot of opportunities for the public to be engaged and be heard, and their opinions even beyond this committee to be factored into the decision.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just appreciate the explanation. While I understand the process, I just think it's important to say it out loud for the general public. At this point in time as we move forward, given the genesis of a lot of the consternation on both sides of this, how it kind of manifested, I think that the more transparency we can have and inclusivity, the better. So looking forward to the results of this group. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor King. And so this is the very beginning of the process now. There are no plans, and we're here to add value to the community, to the neighborhood, not to make it a detriment to the neighborhood. So I think we're all on the same page here. And look forward to working with the committee once they come up with their plans to move forward. So there's no real vote to be taken, but if you want Mr. Manager just to say to move on and end the committee this week, do that. So we're on the roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mauro Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes. So we can file that item. Is that okay? Councilor Rose? Yeah. Okay. File. Motion to file. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mauro Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Mayor Petty?
Yes. So, Mr. Clerk, I think we have 12A. We go out of order here because we have people close to speech. 12A and 16B. Is that correct? Correct. So we have a Councilor Thompson.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I need to recuse myself from this vote.
Okay. Councilor, putting the record, the Councilor Thompson yourself. Thank you, Councilor Carlson. Okay. So we are going to be on transmitting information communication relative to previous council items concerning Hillside Beach, Commons Park, West Trail, and Wetland Project.
Mr. Chairman, we also have 18A and B relative to this as well. I don't know how you want to handle that.
18A and B. The President provide council with a report concerning the options of performing relates to Coles Pond, Hillside Beach, Commons Park, East West Trail, Wetland projects. Council Rose requesting the city clerk provide council with any previously provided information relative to Coles Reservoir.
Mr. Chairman, for 18A and 18B, they were brought under suspension at the last meeting. So,
Yep, I get that. So those are under the interest. Okay, so we are on Hillside Beach in the East West Council Wally.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to start off by recognizing that I know there are a lot of individuals disappointed with the recommendation from the DPW to decommission Hillside Beach. And as I read the memo, there's a lot of information in that memo. But there's one piece of data that sticks out more than others, specifically to me, and that's the fact that in the last 13 years, there have been 3 drownings. And in addition to those 3 drownings, I know specifically there was an additional case where a little boy was rushed to the ER and his life was saved. So in addition to those specific 4 incidences, there were multiple rescues. And I've had a chance to talk to Chief Lavoie from the fire department, and he's talked about the specific concerns of the public safety of that area. And I think it comes down to 2 specific reasons why we do see or have seen so many drownings and so many rescues. There's a 25-foot drop-off. And so what that means is people who may not know how to swim will walk out, wade out, a couple feet in the water, and all of a sudden it drops 25 feet. The other concern, or the other reason why we've seen, unfortunately, so many drownings is because the area is secluded. If someone's there and they are having trouble and they're screaming, a lot of times people can't hear them. And the other issue related to the seclusion of the beach, when there is a rescue, it's very difficult for the fire department, the police department, our scuba diver
rescue team to get there because, again, it is inaccessible. And so there's one area that I never feel comfortable compromising on, and that's public safety and saving lives. And I think it's important to note that you can't change the bottom of the reservoir, and you can't change the fact that it's a secluded area. So my concern, if we are allowing the beach to continue, we're going to certainly see more people dead. And again, my concern, I will not compromise on public safety. And the other thing I want to mention, the project, the boardwalk, the improvements to the east-west trail, specifically this project, it's all about accessibility and inclusion. As previously mentioned and specifically cited in the memo, the Worcester Housing Authority has agreed to improve the access for the residents of Lakeside to enjoy the amenities of the reservoir. And I would point out the city doesn't own, nor do we manage the gate. I know there are concerns that the gate has been locked, and according to the Housing Authority, if we move forward with this project, if we do decommission the beach, they're going to improve access. And we've had meetings with the Housing Authority, and they've committed to doing so. And when we talk about the amenities of Coes Pond, the new boardwalk is going to be a fantastic project. Over the years, we've done tremendous improvements. We've made it more accessible to all members of the community. We're going to be putting in a canoe kayak launch. We've expanded the swim area. And last spring, I had an order asking the manager in the Parks Department to have open water swim lessons for youth. And I believe because of the pandemic, that didn't happen. But a couple months ago, I reintroduced that order asking the Parks Department and the managers to look at some of the work we've done at Stearns Tavern, all the new Coast Park that was built about 5 years ago. The amount of improvement we've done in the area, we want to make sure everyone in the area has access to it, specifically the youth of the Lakeside Apartment. This project is going to do that. We put millions of dollars in there. And again, this project is about accessibility and inclusivity. And the only other thing I'd say, as we move forward, I do think it's important to engage everyone in the neighborhood, that we enjoy and take nature walks. When we do look at opportunities for Recreation Worcester to go to this location in the future, we need to make sure we're working with the residents, we're working with those stakeholders to make sure they have a say in the project. So again, I think this is a very important project. I know many people are disappointed by the decommission of the beach, but as I read this report, I think the public safety aspect of the beach certainly is the priority that I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Williams. Mr. Manager? Mr. Manager first, Council King, I think. Is that it? Council King?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I know Council Wally touched on many of the points that we shared with the council in our communication. A couple of things I do think are worth reinforcing. One is, as Council Wally said, he had introduced the order about open water swimming. It is my intention to include that in the FY22 budget. As was mentioned before, I was hoping to do it in the 21 budget, but didn't do it because of the COVID situation. We weren't going to be able to do the swim lessons because of social distancing. My hope is that next year with the vaccine by the summertime, so that will be a recommendation that's included in the budget that we'll begin preparing in the next few weeks. So that will happen. And also, at the request of Council Wally, we've made a commitment that we will put a Rec Worcester program at Benenda Beach and the Coes Pond Park. And in conjunction with the Worcester Housing Authority, we will set up a program where we will escort the kids from Lakeside who are supervised and brought over to Benenda Beach through the gate so that the kids can have Recreation Worcester programs and water access. So all of those things are part of a very strong commitment that the city council have made over these last 7 years. It's about $9 million of improvements to Benenda Beach, to the first universally accessible intergenerational playground in the city at Coes Pond, the Stearns Tavern, and now with these enhancements that we're talking about with a fishing pier, canoe launch, nature's classroom, boardwalk, that make what was formerly the Coe's Knife industrial site that had been torn down and left empty. It was an environmental justice site with contaminated land and significant dumping, and it has been turned into a public space that has become a magnet, not just for that neighborhood, but for the entire community. That project, all of those projects are something that I am phenomenally proud of, and I think the council all should be phenomenally proud of, because we've added to the accessibility of our park system and improved an area that has significantly contributed to the quality of life of that neighborhood and our community. And this project will take it to the next level, and we will work on putting programs in place to make sure that the children in that immediate area, particularly at Lakeside, can fully benefit from these enhancements that we've all together made. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Council King, I think you had your hand up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to begin by saying that I too have significant concerns citywide as it relates to public safety. And I also would never, ever want to compromise the safety of anyone who lives here. I've been a child protective social worker for 25 years here in the city. So child safety is also something that I take extremely seriously. I say all that to say this. We referenced 3 unfortunate losses of life over the last 13 years. The research I've done, those occurred in July, and August. From the research that I've done, the neighborhood associations, who called in last week, folks from Lakeside who called in last week and this week, we also, at the behest of some of us on the Parks and Recs Committee, emphasized the importance of needing to hear from Lakeside. When that meeting that occurred, which is referenced in the report that was provided, I as well was in attendance for that, in addition to the folks who are listed. That was set up by Councilor Wally. At that meeting, there was not one person from the community that supported the elimination of Hillside Beach, not one. I've yet to hear from anyone from the community who supports that. I 1000% agreed that the boardwalk and all the things that are coming with it, the kayak launch, you know, the idea about the wetlands, you know, all of that is a good thing. And I think it'll be a positive. We heard about $9 million worth of investment. My concern is this, going back to loss of life in July, and August. Going back to 2007, the community was asking the city of Worcester to provide lifeguards and restore the beach. There's a master plan from 2005 that talks about restoring the beach. We have not placed any lifeguards there during the swimmable months of June, July, and August. Haven't done it. That's how it was managed in the past. That's how it was managed in the past. Did a little bit of research. I heard from a constituent. I'd like a report back on this to verify and validate that there was some of the leveraging of Lakeside itself in the pursuit of funds for these projects have occurred from the park grant and the land and water grant, where specifically references Lakeside as a property and community abutting Coe's reservoirs, as it's referenced, for funding. And it's these very folks who are in close proximity to the beach. Now, public safety, any beach that's not lifeguarded is unsafe. I don't care where it is. We've had a number of drownings in other locations, Bell Pond, over on Bell Hill. We're not talking about closing them down. This is a beach that has not been lifeguarded. Going back to the funding for the grants, the land water conservation grants talks about access and ability to use Coe's Pond. Again, money secured by leveraging Lakeside. It's environmental justice application parameters attached to Lakeside. That's how we get the state and federal dollars. I'd like to report back to the council on those two grants and the language used and how and what Lakeside's involvement is with that. You know, we heard a little bit about accessibility. You know, in this report, I know, I just want to be clear, this report talks about a 25-foot, an over 5-foot drop, approximately 25 feet offshore. And again, 3 years, August of 2007, August of 2016, July of 2020, no lifeguards. And that's the ask. If you look at what came out of, if you go to the deed, you go to our deed, the deed very clearly says that the land conferred as Hillside Beach includes any rights the club may have had to use the waters for bathing purposes. It's very clear that this land was deeded in the spirit and in the intent that it's used for bathing. And yes, there's some other things in there as it relates to bathhouses and what have you that they didn't want, or selling of alcohol. That doesn't preclude folks from using it for bathing. We've asked for, the committee has asked for, the Parks Committee, and I've asked for, and it's in all of these documents here, on what it would take to make it safe. We don't have that information. I can tell you that when this came before the Parks Committee, we didn't even have anything to look at. We didn't know what it looked like. The issue of, I just want to put this on the side, the issue of Bonenda Beach has nothing to do with the argument for Hillside Beach, other than just point out that there's millions of dollars been invested there and there's been none invested on the side of Lakeside. You know, and what does it bring to mind? It brings to mind growing up as a young person in Worcester and being told that one side of Park Ave is treated differently than the other side of Park Avenue, Mr. Chairman. That's what this gives you the notions of. It's been a neglected area. There's been overgrowth. We have foreign objects in the water. And I want to know, what are the options that we have here? You know, we had a meeting. There was a Conservation Commission meeting that I attended on Monday. And at that meeting, they asked the question, I asked the question, I'm going to make it as a motion here, whether or not the project can be completed and maintain some level of access to the beach. And the answer was yes, we can rerun the numbers and take a look at that. That would be my motion, Mr. Chairman, that they do exactly that. One of the things that stuck out from the meeting on November 2nd, that Chief Lavoie stated himself, was teach kids how to swim, they won't drown. Teach kids how to swim, they won't drown. I know that the administration, city manager, Rick Worcester, we had a spate of drownings a couple years ago, and the city responded, and we put money there. And the manager made sure there was money put there to make sure that we have swimming lessons. And clearly that's the plan moving forward for Bonenda Beach. But accessibility is important. Accessibility is part of all of this. Anytime someone illegally accesses a beach, meaning you go swimming without a lifeguard present, it's a major public safety issue. We have yet to hear back on the request for report on what it would take to make it safe. There's a number, yep, I'm gonna wrap it up. The issue as it pertains to the fence, we know Worcester Housing Authority owns that fence. My conversations with stakeholders there have indicated they need a joint effort that includes the city once that's open. And that's a motion that was filed a couple of weeks ago, that we provide that assistance to those stakeholders. The order that was filed back in September, it was in September, is that we have a report concerning making safe or safer the conditions at Hillside Beach, with or without a wetland classroom. We have yet to hear back on that. You know, we need to know, how much does that cost? I think it's really an issue of transparency and process. You look at the issues over at Duffy Field, the concerns rolled out of transparency and process. And yes, there was a meeting at St. Andrews in May of 2019. And yes, subsequent to that, there's been an additional meeting. At that meeting, there was nothing but opposition to eliminating the beach. And that's where we stand at this time. I'd like the orders honored before we move this forward. And I really would like the information provided so that we know what the options are and aren't. How can we make it safe? That body of water was safe. I know that they did work with the dam some years ago, and you know, I would really like to see that before we move over. And I know that at the Conservation Commission, they could not move forward with the application process because there was additional questions that needed to be answered. You know, so through the administration, through the chair, just wanted to say, eliminating the beach is difficult. Those folks have as much right to a safe, patrolled beach as the opposite side. You look at Indian Lake, they have 2 beaches there. There's lifeguards. And I don't see it any different here. And yes, with or without the beach, there should be recreation and support for all the residents, not just Lakeside. We've had communication from folks over on Circuit Ave as well, in that area, who all want to maintain the beach. So my question, Mr. Chairman, in terms of process, this is a report.
Correct.
This is a report. I would like to see this held until we have all the information requested, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. We can get some more information on this, but the process is already in place. Councilor Rose, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to be long, and I'm not going to belabor the points. And I think Councilor Wally and Councilor King both, shared eloquent opinions of Hillside. I will just say that in our Parks meeting dating back in September, I don't know if it was myself or Councilor King or whomever, we asked the question a number of times of what we could do or what the cost would be to making the beach safe. I think that there's like some thought out there that if there were, consistent lifeguard, if there was a net in and around the drop, if there were some things that we could do, that it's almost easy in effect to clean it up and make it safe. So and in an effort to share with everyone and respond to each of their questions, I think this is a report that I would certainly welcome in an effort to get all the questions answered that people want there. It's easy to kind of say, well, if there are lifeguards there, or if there's that, or there's this, to get something tangible and in print that's been researched and investigated, I think will go a very long way in this matter. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Rose. So as far as this project is concerned, I do agree with Councilor Wally and what he said in the manager's proposals. I was here as a council back when that gate was closed for public safety issues, along with the beach and other issues that was concerning to the neighborhood and to the Worcester Housing Authority. And the public safety worries me on that, and that still does. And looking at the report, talking to the manager and his team and trying to get a good understanding of this and the safety hazards and what can be fixed, what can't be fixed, and Chief Lavoie's input on this and his response and not getting to the beach on time. That's been closed for 20 years now, and I think the plan's a good plan that the manager has come up with, the fire department, come up with enhancement of the whole community there. And as far as the process is concerned, I think, Mr. Mayor, Council King asked a question regarding the process here. This is an informational report, so that this be clear, we can ask for more reports. I think Council King asked regarding on the grants and also on the Conservation Committee dialogue the other night. So we still can provide reports, Mr. Manager, even though this process is taking place. Is that correct?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, certainly we've provided multiple reports, some of which are before the council tonight. The council wants additional reports. We're always happy to try to write as many reports to answer questions that folks have. The fire chief is on, the Parks Commissioner is on, the DPW Commissioner is on. The three of them will represent what I represent to the council. We do not believe as professionals that we can make that beach safe. We'll put that in the report so you have it in writing, but between the lack of access for fire equipment and rescue equipment at that location, the fact that we cannot remediate the 25-foot drop that is in the area there, and quite honestly, we talk about having fair amenities. This site cannot have a bathhouse there, unlike Bonenda Beach, because of the restrictions in the deed. So it can't even be a full beach like other beaches in the city because of the restrictions on the deed. So we can put that in writing and send that to the council for the next meeting. But it is our recommendation as professionals in DPW, parks, the fire department, and as a manager, that this is not a safe location, and that the way to open up access is to put these improvements in that make the area safe. And that has gotten a commitment from the Worcester Housing Authority's executive director that once that is done and it's safer, that gate can be opened up and there can be greater access, not to the Bonenda Beach side. And I want to clarify one thing. There's been about $600,000 of investment on the Bonenda Beach side. The vast majority, the millions of dollars, have been on the Hillside Beach side. The Coes Pond side, Stearns Tavern, the playground, the walkways. The Bonenda Beach is about $600,000 of investment, the vast majority on the other side.
Thank you. Councilor Rosen, did you want to speak up?
Yes, I do. It's the first time you ever recognized me without raising my hand, so thank you.
Right. I noticed you took your mic off, so your mute off.
Okay, you can hear me now, right?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chairman. About 7 years ago, I was elected to the District 5 City Council seat. And that was on a Tuesday, of course, and Thursday, 2 days later, I had a call from Sue Swanson, who spoke earlier tonight. And Sue said, can we meet soon to talk about the Coes Knife site, which was all overgrown, and there were big pieces of cement there and, debris from that site and that previous business of years ago. So later that week we met and we discussed that site, and I kept saying, Sue, it's the beach I want to talk about. It's Bonenda. It wasn't Bonenda Beach in those days. We named it after, but it certainly was, called Coes Pond Beach, Coes Beach. And we talked a lot about both, but I remember the condition of the Coes Pond, now the Bonenda Beach at that time. The bathhouse, if you can remember, was just a disgusting, closed up, frequently vandalized, unused storage facility at the time. It was terrible. There was no real sand there. There was glass. There was rocks. It was all overgrown. There was trash. I mean, this is what we had, and this was my introduction to District 5 at the time, and I certainly made it a project with a lot of other people to get the Bonenda Beach all fixed up, which we did. And we did obviously a lot more down there. And I think the manager might have been there. It was in March when my first year in the council, so that would have been, I guess, 2014 as the District 5 council. So in March, we met across the street at the closed Big Y market there, Big D market in those days. And we had about 75 to 100 people. I believe City Manager Augustus, it might have been his first year too as city manager, and he was there. And most of us didn't know each other. We talked about the beach a lot. And out of that meeting, we formed the Co-Zone Task Force. And it was that task force with neighborhood input, with city council input, with city administration input, DPW, people from Lakeside. We all worked together. There was no finger pointing then. There were no accusations that some of you are racist, some of you don't care about the kids at Lakeside. I never heard that, because everything we did from day one, we kept in mind the neighborhood. We had plenty of meetings. The Co-Zone Task Force met 5, 10 different places, especially over at Clark University, meeting after meeting, discussion after discussion. After a while, I thought we'd never get anything done because we were talking and talking. But every one of us, city councilors, administrators, every single one of us cared about the kids at Lakeside. We talked about opening up the Hillside Beach. No one wants to decommission it. No one wants to close the beach. But I remind you, it hasn't been a beach that's been open to anyone officially for 20 years. It's dangerous. It's not safe. It's not accessible to public safety equipment. It's really not a good location to send children from Lakeside or anywhere else over in that area. That's the reason for the fence. The fence has nothing to do with I don't like kids from Lakeside, we don't like kids from Lakeside, with anything racist. It has nothing to do with that. Believe me, we talked about the fence years ago. I used to say, please, Worcester Housing Authority, please, and they worked with us closely on Stearns Tavern, the move, and especially the Coes Park. Can you open up the fence so the kids can get here? And they said, we'd love to do that. We know it should be open. But we can't have those kids walking over to Hillside Beach because it's dangerous. That was the key. So we worked so hard on the area. We've got a beautiful Coes Park. We've got a beautiful Stearns Tavern. The beach for the kids at Lakeside and everyone else in that neighborhood, the beach is called Bonenda Beach. That's the beach that, if we're going to throw some money into it, that's the beach that we have to make a little bigger. We have to make the water a little deeper. We have to allow swimming. There's a lot of adults who like to swim in that whole area. We have to make that available to them too. But that's the beach. No one is trying to keep the Lakeside kids away from a beach. We have the beach. Do we need 2 beaches? I'd like to say yes. I don't want to close Hillside Beach. It's been closed for 20 years. I'd like to bring it back. I'm not so sure we can do it. I'm not so sure we can afford it. And I'm not so sure that we should do it, even if we could do it. We have a beach. Let's get all the kids over there. Let's make the Bonenda Beach the most popular beach in the whole area. It's basically the only beach in the whole area because Hillside Beach has been closed. We're not taking Hillside Beach away from anyone. It's been closed for 20 years. 3 drownings? I think that's enough. 3 drownings is enough. Let's not invite any more. The project is to make this into a wetlands area, an educational institution. That was my whole life. I think that's great. Educational facility there, where kids from Lakeside and all around the city can come over if they want to learn about wetlands and things like that. So, Mr. Mayor and my colleagues, let's decommission the beach, eventually work on Coes Pond, Bonenda Beach, make it more swimmable. It's safe. It's just kind of shallow. Let's make it better for everyone. And then let's open the gate. The Housing Authority, working with the city, will open the gate. Guarantee it. As long as it's safe. They won't open that gate if it's going to be unsafe. And God bless them for that. It's not a racist attitude, and I'm tired of hearing that. We had 3 or 4 callers who basically said we were racist. I worked over there as a district councilor for 4 years, gave my heart and soul to that area. And every day and everything we did over there, it was with those kids in mind. There was never a racist thought, let's keep those kids behind the fence. It was just the opposite. The talk was, can we open the fence? And the housing authority said yes, with the condition it's safe. So let's make it accessible to the park, the Coast Park, the Stearns Tavern, and the John Bonanza Beach. Those are the 3 sites that are safe and great for the kids at Lakeside Apartments. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councilor Rosen. Anybody else? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I just had a couple closing remarks.
Sure. Councilor King?
Yeah, just again, for me, this is about process and transparency. As the manager mentioned, there's been a number of meetings. There's also still a number of outstanding questions that I'd like to see answered before we move forward with, significant steps to eliminate that beach. This is important. I think in the interest of harmony for our city, that we should be as transparent as possible. I mean, I think even in the passionate statements made by my colleague just prior to me, you heard a lot of certainty and some uncertainty. I think we all probably would want to keep the beach open if possible. I think the city could have been better stewards. Again, in 2005, the master plan talks about keeping the beach and bringing it up to par. That's what it references. And again, the monies that are being leveraged based on the economics of Lakeside. And this isn't, for me anyway, this isn't about anything other than transparency and process and making sure we're as equitable as possible. If there's a report, I understand what's being reported to us. And some of these reports are similar to other reports. There's not a lot of differentiation there, but there's been additional information requested. Can we please have the additional information, including what it would take? If it's $1 billion, it's $1 billion. What it would take to make that swimming space safe. And of course, there's been hasn't been any drownings over at Bonanza Beach. For some people who are tall, the water only goes to your waist. And the implication that, the other side has a bathhouse and this doesn't, and therefore that's another reason. Well, it's not. This side is closely abutted by residents. You go over to Mill Street, that beach, there's not a lot of houses next to it whatsoever. And those folks who use that beach would be able to go back to their homes and do their bath housing activities. There's a lot in these reports, and I try to stay away from the Bonanza Beach component. I only commented on it because it was brought up by callers and by the speakers prior to me. Because for me, this is a singular issue about can we have a safe beach? What would it take? And again, the Watershed Association that was on here before last week, these residents who surround Lakeside have been asking for this for decades. And we should have been better stewards of this gift that was bequeathed to us for the purpose of bathing.
Thank you, Councilor King. Anybody else? So basically, the process is already in place. We already have a master plan. I think it's funded. It's moving on, but we can get those reports back to the manager that he's asked for. I have no problem with the reports. So we can have a motion for those reports. And
Mr. Chairman, if that report could just include some sort of mapping of where this drop is and how steep it is, only because in the report it says, that there's a drop of over 5 feet, 25 feet out. and it's been referenced twice tonight by the administration and one of my colleagues that it's a 25-foot drop. So if we could just get some mapping of that and some clarification.
I thought it was a 25-foot drop, but I read it. But okay, we can take a look at that again.
I can read it to you if you're doubting what I'm saying, Mr. Chair.
No, I'm not doubting.
Okay, because I can read it to you. I've read it 3 times.
No, I'm good. We're all set.
Okay.
So we're going to provide those reports, but just to be clear, this isn't really a vote on the project. We just vote on the reports because the project was already voted on by the council, I believe. So we will ask for those reports so people in the community can have an understanding of why we think it's a so, roll call.
Councilor Bergman? Yes. Councilor Caloia?
Yes.
Councilor King?
I missed that motion, Mr. Chairman. Is this the file? What is it?
It's the motion for the report you requested.
Okay, yes.
Councilor Carlson, recuse yourself. Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, so we're all set there. Anybody else? No. Okay. Okay, we're out.
16B and 12A, how would you like to proceed?
Oh, yeah, we should. I'm sorry, I forgot about that. So we have to file those reports, or we send those to commission, like that, just table.
Send to committee?
Then consent decree, if you like, on that in committee, Council Rose, or, okay, the same, each item's the same, so we'll just send 16B to committee, and so we can file 12A, is that the one, they're one and the same. Okay, roll call.
So, Mr. Chairman, for the record, 16B to committee, and then 12A to file. Roll call. Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloia?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson, recuse yourself. Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, 9.9A, Transfer of Information Communication for the Fire Department Staff and Training in Recruit Academy. Councilor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To say that I am disappointed regarding the status of not getting a class this year is an understatement. I read thoroughly the report. I spoke with the chief at great length, and there are a number of factors here that I understand, but I'm still very concerned. It's my understanding that part of the reason was we did not get the SAFER grant. Do we have any idea, through you, Mr. Chair, which we were going to use for the academy, what happened to that, why we didn't get it?
Mr. Manager, or Chief? Can we just ask the councilors to mute themselves if they are not speaking? So, Mr. Manager?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't necessarily know why we didn't get it. I don't know if the chief has any insight to these things we have gotten in the past, but why we didn't get funded this time, I'm not sure. I have a specific answer.
Okay, thank you. The other factor that I think was probably overriding in my mind was the fact that civil service did not certify the candidates on the list until October. Is that correct?
Mr. Manager?
I'd ask the chief to respond to that.
Chief, Lavoy, you on the line there? He was on the line.
Well, I was told that was an issue as well. And so another factor with a class, from what I understand, having the class in the summer, as we did this year,
is not a positive thing to do. They don't get the training. The optimum time for training, from what I understand, is through the winter and spring. And I understand that. I get it. I'm just concerned that we're going to be putting a lot of overtime in. I want to make sure that we don't go back to brownouts. That's a real concern. Doing overtime is, we can do it, but it also puts a greater risk on our firefighters' physical ability as well, to continue to do a lot of overtime. And we could potentially get more IOD issues. So, I understand there are some good things in this report. The fact that our trainers are going to be trained, which they definitely need that. That's great. Congratulations on getting the grant for that. The Officers Academy and Training Division, having that will be very helpful. And that's one thing that I'm very proud of our fire department, is the training that is done, and the trainers are highly regarded. So the Officers Academy, the command system training, and the standard operating guideline review will all happen. But again, I have to say that I'm very disappointed, because we were trying to avoid having to do major classes. I mean, I would think we're probably looking at the numbers ahead. We're probably looking at probably a class of 35 to 40 next year. And that's a lot. So, but I hope that we can overcome all of the issues and continue to keep our firefighters and our city safe. And I thank you for the good parts that are coming out of this, the good training. But I would be remiss if I didn't say that I was disappointed not having a class.
I know the chief is trying to get on the line, but Mr. Manager, if you want to speak before we try to get him on.
Yeah, I know Chief Lavoie was waiting to be unmuted. I think he needed to do that to answer, but I want to make clear to the council that even though we didn't get the grant, we would have found the money to finance the class had the chief wanted to do that. It was the chief and the training division strong recommendation that because of the relatively small number of openings and the priority on the leadership and supervisory training, that they wanted to prioritize this year, that be the priority as opposed to a relatively small class. And so I've taken the chief's recommendation, the training division's recommendation, and supported that, and prioritizing that kind of leadership training this year. And we'll fund a class for next year, which will be, probably in the 30 range, which is about typical for the size class. This year's class would have been relatively small, and they didn't think it was as efficient a use of the training division's time as the benefit they'll get from doing the leadership and supervisory training. So, I was deferential to the recommendation of the chief and the training division. But I think hopefully the chief is available to weigh in.
Mr. Clark, can you get him on there? Or?
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to try to unmute two calling users. Chief Lavoie, if you can hear us. Chief Lavoie, can you hear us?
Yep, Chief Lavoie. Yep. Can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Chief.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay, through the chair. Right now, if we were to have a class, right now we're down 12. I know in the report it says 15, but the actual number is 12. All right. By December, we'll be down to 381, which will be 28. This will be December of 21. And I just want to say that in the last, in 2014 and 2017, we went down to the actual number, 381. And both of those years, we hired a class of 27 and 26, respectively. And this year, in December, we project to be at 381, and we're anticipating on putting in, for the 22 budget, a class of 28. I can't see it going more than 30, and that's because of retirements and there's a lot of people waiting on disabilities and things like that. But it's extremely important, and I too am disappointed that we're not having class. The manager wanted a class, and he wanted to fund a class, and I spoke to my people, and they were the ones that convinced me that we need to set a new playbook, all right? Everybody needs to be working from the same playbook. We can add all the manpower we want, but if we're all not on the same page, working from the same playbook, then it's not going to work. So this is where our leadership training is coming in. This is going to be a phenomenal year for the people that are on the department now, their leadership training, and I think this will carry us into the future. It's a must-do, and again, I'm disappointed about the class, but obviously we need a class next year. We can't go below, go without a class, but so.
Thanks, Chief. Okay.
For you, Mr. Chair, I want to thank the chief. And again, I'm not criticizing, just saying that I'm disappointed, as the chief said he was. But I also understand these other needs. My concern is, we've got the report coming back, and one of my concerns is going to be staffing on that, and I want to, I think the numbers may change. So that's just my concern. I appreciate all the hard work that was done, and I especially appreciate the professionalism of your training division. They certainly have done an outstanding job, and I get and truly understand the need to have the officers training in some of the most difficult times of the year, so that they get used to it. And so we know from history that winter and early spring have most difficult weather. I also know it's safer for them to train during the winter and spring as opposed to the summer with all of that gear on. It just isn't, it's not a good thing. So I get that. Do we have, through you, Mr. Chair, to the chief, do we have any indication from civil service that they will be on time certifying the list?
Chief?
I would, through the chair, I would imagine that COVID had a lot to do with the delay. I'm hoping that hopefully we're going to, after we put in our request into the budget, if it gets approved, we're going to request the list right away. So hopefully we'll get it early. We'll get it by August, September at the latest, and we'll be able to put a class on by early March with no problem whatsoever.
Chief, could you please reiterate, through you, Mr. Chair, could you please reiterate about brownouts?
Chief, about the brownouts?
Yes. Yeah, so I already talked to the manager, and it is going to cost us some overtime money to not have a class. Obviously, there will be a savings element, but and I forgot what your question was. I'm sorry.
That's right. I wanted you to elaborate on, I had stated that one of my concerns was that we not have brownouts. That's been an issue before.
Okay.
And right.
Right. So we estimate overtime at anywhere from $500,000 to $750,000, and we absolutely that has been calculated in without brownouts. So I fully expect that we will not have brownouts. And in 2017, we ended brownouts in April of 2017, and we were down to the 381 number with a class coming on. But I think I'm pretty sure we can do it without brownouts.
Okay, Chief, what is the optimum number of firefighters that we would like to have? I know we're below that, but
right now our number for full complement is 409. Right now we're at 300 and I have my
393.
No, it's higher than that. It's 397. Right now we're at 397. Yeah.
Okay.
And 409 is our full complement. We actually, at some point, we'd like to have more than that. And at some point, we would like to more manpower in training division, so we don't have to choose between training a recruit class and training our people. But that's all part of the consulting, and that's all part of the future of the fire department, and that's the way we're heading. But
okay. Thanks, Chief. Mr. Manager, do you have something you want to add?
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, Councilor Toomey. Mr. Manager?
I would just want to remind the council that we're in the middle of a top-to-bottom review of the fire department. We have the consultants who have been working with Chief Lavoie and Chief Dyer and their teams, kind of looking at everything from staffing and training and policy. And, we're expecting a set of recommendations. So, discussions about what the right numbers are hopefully will be informed by the recommendations of the consultants that are working now in that top to bottom review. And it's hoped that, some of that might be able to be included as we prepare next year's budget.
Thank you. Councilor King, I'm sorry, who else said?
I just wanted to say thank you, and again, would love to have had the class on, but I understand all of the facts that it wasn't going to be. But thank you to everybody for all their hard work.
Thank you, Councilor Toomey. Councilor King. You might be on mute, Councilor King. I'm not sure. I can't.
All right, there I am. Thank you. Just, on the face of it, this was concerning to me. I can certainly appreciate the idea and the direction that the chief mentioned as it relates to making sure folks are operating from the same playbook. And I know that under his leadership, he's the one who wanted the top-down review. He stood up in front of that, and that means a lot to everyone. It means a lot for our safety. It means a lot for our firefighters and their families and the folks, everyone who lives here that they serve. That being said, just first, if the administration could share what a brownout is. I understand what it is, but I don't know that the people that we are listening have any idea. If you could just share what a brownout is.
Mr. Manager or the Chief?
Through the chair, a brownout is when we close a company, whether it's an engine company. Well, it would be an engine company. We wouldn't close the ladder, but we would close an engine company for a shift, and then we would take those people and we would spread them out throughout the city. So we would be down from 13 engine companies to 12. We talked to the city manager back in 2017, and we told him what a dangerous, method of doing things that was, and he agreed. And we haven't had a brownout since April of 2017, and I don't expect to going forward.
Thank you, Chief. Councilor King.
Thank you so much for that clarification. And then just if you could reiterate, I might have lost it. The last three classes for firefighters, how many were in those classes? Through the chair.
The last three, let's see. The last three classes we had between 18 and 22 in each class. And when at the end of the year, before we put the class on, we were down to 388, anywhere between 388 and 398. So this time we're going to.
Councilor King.
Yeah, and of those folks that enter the classes, how many finish? Is it 100% go through and become and complete the class, or is there kind of a average dropout or not incomplete status that occurs, or is it 100% completion?
We do have some classes that are 100%, but on average we lose 1, 2, maybe 3 to failures.
Thank you. And to the administration, the chief mentioned the saving element that might occur after the overtime is meted out. What might that saving element be?
Mr. Manager, the chief.
I'm not sure what the chief was referring to in terms of a saving element.
So through the chair, if we were to pay us out the salary of a class of 20 for the full year, it would be 1-point-something million, where we'd be hiring someone in March. So there would be a savings there. So it would be offset with the overtime. I don't know the exact figures. These are just rough estimates. But.
Thank you. I certainly haven't heard from anyone in opposition to this, but I will say that, the fact that we have the money and we're not doing it causes me pause, but certainly have to defer to the professional expertise of the chief in this matter. What I think is that, I wanted to know specifically what prevents us from providing the leadership training, enhancing the department while concurrently having a class. What is the barrier? Given the fact that we have the money, is there an overtime element that could happen in that aspect? Like what is the barrier to concurrently enhancing leadership and development? And again, I understand, you're bringing someone in, you want to onboard them as full-fledged firefighters, and you want consistency, in practice for safety and life-saving measures and all of that. So I get that, but just wondering if there's something that prevents us doing that concurrently, given that we have the finances to provide that class.
Mr. Chairman, I think the chief can expound on this, but the challenge really is the capacity of the training division. There just isn't the capacity amongst the training staff to do all of the background investigations and the preparatory work to bring a class on, and then do a class as well as do the kind of aggressive leadership training that they're proposing. So it's really about the capacity of the training division to do both things at the same time. And so one of the things that the chief has mentioned to me over time is, as we've brought on these classes back to back, we have a very young department. We have a very kind of relatively new department, and that's great in many ways, but it also creates some challenges. And one of the things that they want to try to tighten up on is the supervision and the oversight and the mentorship that the more seasoned and senior officers in the firefighting service have to provide to some of these new recruits and new green shields that come onto the job, and make sure that they get the kind of support and supervision necessary as we've been aggressively bringing class on after class over the last number of years. And so now try to take a pause to create the right balance so that all those new folks are getting the supervision and the leadership that they need to be successful.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilor King.
Yep, last question. So I think you mentioned that folks, a class may start in March of the next year. How long would it take for someone to go through the class and complete it and be fully engaged as a firefighter?
Through the chair, the classes are 16 weeks, so they would be done by the mid-June.
So mid-June. Okay, so you're talking about a year and a half down staff.
That's correct.
All right. You know, I understand the strategic approach here. I do have some concerns as it relates to the staffing levels, given the fact that we have the ability. And I hope that as we move forward, we'll be able to staff the training division to the levels necessary, so in the future we don't have to forego onboarding the appropriate number of firefighters in order to keep our city safe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm obviously going to have the similar comments to my other colleagues, and that is that although I'm disappointed, I think we have to defer to the chief. I will say that I think we're all going to have to hold our breaths in hoping that there's not a amount of retirements or people on injured reserve or otherwise that is expected, because then we are going to have, I would assume, some manpower issues, but God willing, those things don't happen in any amount or any degree that isn't already anticipated. I would, though, through the chair, like to ask the chief, given that I know candidates were contacted, they may have been contacted more than once this past year to start the process of being interviewed for positions for what was assumed to be a class. Are there any accommodations that could be made for some of those prospective applicants who may reach the age limit or who may have done well on the exam and now are faced with the scenario of having to take the exam over again? Can any class still be certified? Can there be any accommodations made to keep the list intact going forward when the next class is going to be selected? I just think, given the capacity of the training division being the issue, it's somewhat unfair to put any calls out because there's an expectation that there was going to be a class. And I know that's always subject to funding and other things, but I'm just thinking in the sense of fairness that it would be nice to accommodate this existing class in 2022, knowing that it wasn't their fault that the applications weren't going forward. So through the chair to the chief, maybe he could comment on what, if anything, could be done to try to help along those candidates. Chief?
Through the chair to the counselor, I too would like to see the existing list in effect, but that's a civil service question that I really have no answer to.
Need a report if you like.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so seeing nobody else, we will. You want that in committee, Councilor Toomey, or you want to file that in committee?
Thank you.
So we'll send that to Public Safety Committee, and we will ask for a report regarding civil service on the list and whether we can maintain the current list for the next class. Hopefully on the roll call? Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Florio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, we are 9.35A and B.
Mr. Chairman?
Councilor Russell.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions on 3.5B
And also later on, 9.38 on the miscellaneous agenda transfers, if we could ask a question for the two of those items.
Sure.
For you to the administration, I don't know if this is something the manager would have off the top of his head, or if it's something maybe Mr. McGurthy would know about. I believe he's still on the line. The $75,000 for building rehab. From what I can see, it's going toward the property on Providence Street, the fire barn on Providence Street. And then the fire station is renewed, the lease is renewed for the same amount of money it's had for the last few years. So we're putting $75,000 in, and then we're only getting $3,100 out each month. And it's leased to UMass Memorial Realty, Inc., which I believe is a subsidiary of UMass. And my question is a few things. Number one, are they the only provider of emergency services, ambulance services in the city of Worcester? And if they are, then so be it. And if is what's basically the background on this, if you could, Mr. Chairman, through you to the manager, because from a business standpoint, putting that much money in to a business that's billing our residents when they utilize their services for ambulance services, and then only getting the same amount of rent that we got in previous years without any increases. Putting $65,000 in.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask Ms. Johnson, who's on, who kind of worked on this issue, but the $75,000 is to facilitate some of the venting in the old fire station on Providence Street, because the ambulances are there and the exhaust from those ambulances need to be vented properly to keep the ambulance staff safe. And so that's really what the improvements are going to. And one of the benefits of having that location on Providence Street as opposed to them dispatched from another location is to shrink the response time. I think that was one of the compromises that was made when the fire station was decommissioned, and there was concern in the neighborhood about response times. And having that facility, even though it's older and will need some repairs periodically over the years, allows for quicker response times, particularly to that Union Hill neighborhood. But I'll ask Ms. Johnson to just touch base on the particulars of the negotiation.
Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The history of the use of this building by UMass goes back more than a decade, and the original agreement called for a lease amount that equaled the amount of the improvements the building needed to originally house the UMass EMS. In this new agreement, the $75,000 in improvements is a little less than half of what we will take in as revenue. So it actually is an improvement to the original agreement.
Councilor Russell?
Okay. All right, so it's the same amount, but it's an improvement because we're not spending as much to upgrade the building as we did in previous years. Is that what I'm hearing, Mr. Chairman, through you?
Councilor, I'm sorry. Ms. Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, that is correct.
Mr. Chairman, I'm not going to try and hold the thing up, but I just would suggest that this is in fact it's good to have the building occupied, obviously. I was part of those original conversations with our previous city manager when the fire barn was closed and when we had the Arlington Street fire and the neighborhood concerns. But I just look at it and I just kind of wonder if we could be doing better. And not only that, if there are competing services for other ambulance companies, are we being fair to them by doing this deal with UMass if there are competing companies out there by just doing this transaction. So I'll just throw it out there, Mr. Chairman, and I'm willing to support the item, but I just, in the future, I'd like to be in the conversation about it and maybe look at some other alternatives.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, so we are going to take 9.35A and B along with 9.36A and B and 9.3A on the roll call. So we'll take those 5 items collectively. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes, 10.8 to 10.H, I'm sorry, 10A through 10H adopted on the roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson? Councilor Merrill Carlson? Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, 11A, request the city manager requests Commissioner of Public Works and Parks provide council with an update on the traffic study occurring on Chandler Street. Further request city manager include in said update information relative to the ability to have a meeting where community members are allowed to give input on the traffic park concerns in the area. So I know Councilor Rivera is not here tonight, but I think we should send that on to the manager. We'll give her, if she wants to speak about it when she comes back, she's more than welcome to. Instead of waiting a couple of weeks and delaying this, I think we'll try to get a report back. So with that, we'll send that to the manager. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey? Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request the manager to consider organizing a public meeting to discuss ways the city can help business owners on Park Ave who have been negatively impacted by COVID-19. We have Councilor Rivera and Wally. So Councilor Wally, you know this.
You know, I signed on to this order. I want to commend Councilor Rivera for her forward thinking. It's an area of the city where we have a tremendous amount of small businesses. It's a commercial corridor. So just happy to sign on.
Okay. So we'll send that to the manager. We'll give Councilor Rivera.
Sign on that as well.
Sure. Okay. Councilor, myself, can sign on and everybody else. So as amended, a roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, 11C, request city manager requests Assistant Commissioner of Public Works provide city council report as to any limitations, times, and/or days for public use of any sports fields at Beaverbrook Park. Council Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm tempted to say as it reads with just one small caveat. I would hope that this information is simple enough that it could be reported back at the next meeting. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll send that to the manager. Roll call.
Mr. Mayor, can I sign on to that, please?
Yep. Council Wall, would like to sign on. So we will send that.
Sign on.
Everybody else wants to sign on too? So put everybody else on? Okay. As amended, roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. First city manager confirms the Assistant Commissioner of Public Works and Parks, the Executive Director of the Worcester Housing Authority as to one, what sports field playgrounds are located near the WH properties and which WH properties are for use. What factors are considered in yearly budget allocations for completing master plans for sports fields, playgrounds? Council Bergman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the number of years I've been on the council, one of the issues or items that's always been somewhat perplexing to me is that although I realize we can't complete every master plan at once, there are master plans that get worked on periodically, and there are other master plans that don't. We also have talked, particularly recently, about playgrounds and particularly areas that maybe have some economic hardship. And my question really is, can we work together with Worcester Housing, with our Assistant Commissioner of Parks, and trying to figure out ways where we can make sure that the master plans are worked on a yearly basis in some sort of logical and fair way, particularly with respect to some of the fields and playgrounds that are near Worcester Housing Authority properties, where there are obviously youth that could greatly benefit, particularly in the summertime, by having playgrounds and parks master plans completed close to home. So I'm looking forward to a report. I think it would be educational for myself, and I would think for my colleagues as well, is on a yearly basis, how are we doing this? How are we deciding where the money goes as far as which master plans are moving towards completion? Thank you.
Okay, send that to the manager. Everybody wants to sign on. Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to sign on to this, but I'd just like to make a comment as well. I think one of the things that we have been really proud of over the years that I've been on the council, and probably before, is that we have done a good job of spreading our funding out and revamping and rehabilitating and enhancing park space across the city. I certainly, with that in mind, look forward to this. I hope to learn a little bit about how those decisions are actually made. I think it's a great order, and looking forward to the report.
Thank you. Councilor Rose.
I too would like to sign on, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to make another comment. I think that this has come up a couple of times. I know Commissioner Antonelli has heard me say it on a couple of occasions, but I think that when we call master plans, it lends itself to something that is almost a certainty. I would appreciate if we could consider rethinking that language. We had talked about this in the past as a proposed plan. We do know that these plans are pending funding and the will of the council and other items. And I think when the public hears a master plan, it gives them this idea that these things are going through regardless. So just another pitch for changing the language of that as well. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so we'll take that as amended. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes. Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, next time, request St. Man, request Chief Development Officer amend, update the Articles of X, Continuing Care, Retirement Community section of the City of Worcester zoning ordinance in order to ensure clarity of its interpretation to remove the bylaws' current ambiguity. Council Wally?
Thank you, Mr. Manager. The city's zoning ordinance includes a section on continuing care retirement communities. And the intent of the CCRC bylaw is to allow flexibility in the development of housing and related services to seniors. So essentially, a CCRC application receives a special permit by the planning board if the applicant meets the criterion of the bylaw. About a year ago, an application, a CCRC application, was denied by the planning board, and there was debate by the board as to if the application met the criterion of the ordinance. The developer brought the application to land court, and the land court remanded the application back to the planning board. A few weeks ago, the planning board reviewed the application for a second time, and they denied it for a second time. And one of the members of the planning board, I think multiple members of the planning board, discussed the specific ordinance and its ambiguity. And so my order tonight has no, I'm not concerned that it was denied. I'm not I don't have any problems that the application was denied. But what I do think we need to do is improve the ordinance so that the planning board has the appropriate tools, so that when they see CCRC applications, they don't have any ambiguity as to if it meets the criterion or not. And so we know the importance of housing for seniors in Worcester. When families or when couples downsize and they want to stay in Worcester, we want to make sure we have enough housing to meet that need. And the CCRC ordinance allows that to happen, but I just think we need to improve that ordinance so there's less ambiguity. So the planning board, when they see these applications, it can be specific as to if the applicant meets the criterion or not. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll send that to Councilor King.
Yeah, just wanted to comment on this. I mean, certainly a lifetime of continuity and care and aging in place is extremely important for this vulnerable population. And I support this order filed by Councilor Wally. But I just did have a question through the chair to perhaps the administration or Mr. Trainer. This amending that's being requested, what's the actual process that we'd have to go through here?
Mr. Trainer?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, through the chair, to the councilor. The process would be the normal process to amend the zoning ordinance. The proposed amendment will be drafted up. We'll probably work with the Planning and Regulatory Services Department to do that. We get submitted to the council, get referred to the planning board for a hearing, back to the council for a hearing at the Land Use Committee or the Economic Development Committee, and then back to the full council to vote it up or down. In a nutshell, that's the process.
Thank you. And if we could just get a copy of what we're asking to be updated and amended, because I haven't seen it. I'm a little, hesitant to ask to amend and update something that I have not seen. I know there's a process, so I'm not going to stand in the way of this. There's a process where we come back to the council. But if we can get that information in short order so we can be prepared and have some discussions with folks prior to it coming back and prior to, the process playing out. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll send that to the manager what's that?
I apologize. I had my hand up. Sorry, yeah.
I didn't see it.
That's okay. I apologize. It'll be very brief. I think it's an excellent order. I'd like to sign on. I would say that Councilor Wally's correct. There's a lot of ambiguity. I would also say that there's kind of a potpourri of what you can choose to provide or not provide under the current ordinance, which causes lots of problems in interpreting whether or not a developer is or isn't in compliance. And I think that's an issue that needs to be resolved, because it's not just a question of which applications are allowed or denied. It's a question also of the ones that are allowed to go forward, whether they're complying with their original, with what they've originally offered to provide. And I know firsthand that there's been several incidents throughout the city, and that's been hard to enforce because of the options that developers have when they create these continuing care centers. I would like to ask if Councilor Wally doesn't object, that we could get a report perhaps from Planning Board in the context of this order as to what problems have been arising at continuing care centers that currently exist. So perhaps we can better tailor make a future ordinance. Knowing what problems currently exist, I think can give us some guidance to how to change or amend the language if we're inclined to do that to make the ordinance better.
Okay, fine. Shaking his head. So we will send that to the manager as amended. A roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Request the manager to provide council with an update concerning previously adopted order relative to installing a camera at Duffy Field for the purpose of monitoring dumping in the park. Council.
Yes, if Mr. Antonelli is on the phone, that would be, on the line, that would be good. I could have a few questions to the chair. One of the things I was wondering is, I was under the impression that there was a temporary camera there. If we could just go over the process of when that camera was there, and was there anything that was, any data from the time that camera was there? To the chair.
Mr. Antonelli, was there a camera there, and was there any data?
Mr. Chairman, to you, to the councilor, yes, there was a camera there for a couple of weeks in June. The camera picked up no activity on the site, and it was moved to another location for some other issues that were happening for street operations.
Thank you. Through the chair, a couple more questions. So I think originally when I filed this item, it was for a permanent camera, but I've heard, as we spoke earlier, Mr. Antonelli, through the chair, that a permanent camera cannot be placed at Duffy Field. Is that correct?
Chairman, through the chairman to the councilor, there can be one placed. It is not, we don't have a permanent camera there at this time. As I stated to you earlier today, we are installing a new camera there, a new temporary camera, either sometime this week through street operations. They will be taking care of that and getting that installed, and then we'll work back from that point.
Okay, thank you for the update.
Thank you. So you all set this, Council Crowe, send that to the manager? Or?
Yes. No, we can, fine. No,
Okay.
fine.
Okay, so motion is the file. Roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Calorio?
Yes.
Council King?
Yes.
Council Mark Carlson?
Yes.
Council Rivera? Council Rose? Council Rose?
Yes.
Council Rosen?
Yes.
Council Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey?
Yes.
Council Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. I request that the man provide the city council with information as a temporary outside food pickup can be provided at Lucky's Cafe at 102.5 Grove Street. Councilmember Carlson?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So first, I'm going to start with, I have a letter here from the chamber. They're writing today to express their support for item 11G on tonight's city council agenda, requesting the city manager to provide the council information as to how to temporary curbside food pickup can be provided for Lucky's Cafe located at 102.5 Grove Street. As you are aware, the health and economic crisis caused by COVID-19 pandemic has hit our city businesses hard since its onset approximately 10 months ago. Our hospitality industry has specifically been adversely affected due to the pandemic. Approximately 1 in 4 restaurants have closed their doors for good, and that number continues to rise due to time and capacity restrictions put in place under governor's orders. Lucky's Cafe had to close its doors for over 6 months last year. Like many other restaurants here in the city, finding new and creative ways to do business has become part of the norm. It's important that our city officials help our small businesses navigate through the pandemic, and allocating spaces for them to do curbside pickup will help them immensely. This is the Worcester Regional Chamber of Commerce in support of this request, and ask the city to help our restaurants industry through this difficult time. Thank you in advance. Yours truly, Alex Guardiola, Director of Government Affairs and Public Policy. So as you've heard from Alex, and also the reason for myself and Councilor Rose with this item is that Lucky's Cafe, that has been in this city for many, 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 many years, is located over there on Grove Street. They do not have the ability for signage on the outside of their building. They also, at this point, don't have the ability for somebody to run in and grab food and leave. we as a city and this council has really been as good as we possibly can be with our businesses, trying to help them, whether it was through the extension of premises or the relief for our restaurants with their fees, and as well as the small resiliency grant. So I think that, you know, we as a city, and I know that we've talked about this a little bit with economic development, curbside pickup for some of our businesses here in the city. So tonight, I'm asking for Lucky's Cafe, located at 102.5 Grove Street. And again, this is something that's temporary. I mean, who knows? Does this turn into something permanent? Because I know other big cities do have something that's there for curbside pickup. But this really is going to be, if they're not able to get some relief, it's really going to mean whether they stay afloat or not. And again, this business back many, many, many years ago, when I worked for the city, they were over there. They've been serving this city for a long, long time. And keep in mind with WPI not in, you know, full blown classes, and with the hotel right next door, that where they always got their business from, a lot of these places just aren't there. So they're trying to think of creative ways, and I think that we as a city should be helpful to give them curbside pickup over there on Grove Street.
Okay, good job. So, Councilor Rose?
Very quickly, Mr. Chairman, I think Councilor Carlson, said it very, very well. I just want to add that this could be a life or death thing for them to survive. I can't reiterate that enough. They're really, really, really hurting. So anything that we could do to help them over there would be tremendous. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll send that to the manager for a quick response. A roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, request the mayor to provide council to report relative to whether any CARES Act funding can be provided to the city's food banks due to the issues surrounding food insecurity during COVID-19. Councilmember O'Connell.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Again, we've done and tried to do as much as we possibly can for people during really difficult times. And I think that, we as a city and with the city manager and the administration, we've really led the way in many ways for the Commonwealth. And quite frankly, I think from the country's standpoint as well. And I was hoping that we as a city could look at, with some of this CARES Act money, could we possibly be sending some monies to our smaller food pantries here in the city? And I say smaller, meaning that I know that we have the Worcester County Food Bank, but I'm talking about all of our small food pantries. I think, Worcester Together is doing with the United Way, they're doing a drive-by food bank. I mean, I think that we really don't have a good grasp on how many people really are food insecure, and it's pretty sad that that's where we're at. But I know that we're great about taking care of our folks here in the city of Worcester, so I'm asking if the administration would look at some of the monies that we have from the CARES Act, or quite honestly from any other place, for us to be helpful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Rose. Oh, you're on mute. There you go.
I would just like to sign on to this, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think everybody does. So amended, roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera, Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, next item is request city manager convert the meters in front of 100 Grove Street from a coin operated to able to also take credit cards. Councilman Carlson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I know that we as a city have, we're laying out a whole new parking plan in the city. And I know we're looking to go to some new meters where we could use credit cards and some other technology. What I was hoping for is, could we put some meters over there on Grove Street, in that vicinity of 100 Grove Street, convert those meters, given the fact that, like I just said earlier, I mean, we have some businesses over there, whether it's the restaurants or some other agencies over there where people are coming in and out. And quite honestly, today, people don't necessarily carry change with them. So I'm asking for the administration if they could take a look at that area and put in some, the credit card meters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so the manager, roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Councilor Calorio, Councilor King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera, Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay, let's see. Request of the city manager to provide, work with the Assistant Commissioner of Parks and explore a location for potential BMX/motocross track. Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A number of residents who are big into the motocross community recently reached out to me and asked me if the city would be open to exploring a potential motocross track that could translate or have positive residual effects to people who BMX. I had the privilege of running the Barnstable Skate Park many, many years ago. It was a municipally owned skate park. I know we have a similar one over on Green Hill. But this is another safe, creative way to have our youth recreate in a positive way. And given, COVID and the potential hangover from COVID, the more that we can do to create some individualized recreation like this, I think the better. Again, I think it's a positive thing for us to get creative in around our recreational spaces. And I look forward to seeing what Commissioner Antonelli and his team come up with here. These tracks don't necessarily or typically cost a whole lot of money. There's not a whole lot of investment required in this. We're just talking about some paths and a little bit of dirt and a little bit of oversight. And so I think this is a positive thing for us to explore. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Does that mean yes, you want to sign on? Okay. So, Councilor King, anybody else? I guess everybody wants to sign on, almost everybody. As amended, roll call.
Councilor Bergman,
Yes.
Councilor Calorio,
Yes.
Councilor King,
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson,
Yes.
Councilor Rivera, Councilor Rose,
Yes.
Councilor Rosen,
Yes.
Councilor Russell,
Yes.
Councilor Toomey,
Yes.
Councilor Wally,
Yes.
and Mayor Petty.
Yes. Okay. Requesting manager by council to update the property at 342 West Boylston Street. The old Dean, Councilor Rose, following two.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, we dealt with a comparable entity in the old Barbers Crossing. Just don't want the entrance to our Northwester to have a long-standing issue and problem in the same capacity. Just hoping to get an idea or a sense of what's going on with this parcel in hopes of hopefully getting it back to its glory in some capacity. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you. So send that to the manager. Roll call.
Counselor Bergman?
Yes.
Counselor Delorio?
Yes.
Counselor King?
Yes.
Counselor Mara Carlson?
Yes.
Counselor Rivera? Counselor Rose?
Yes.
Counselor Rosen?
Yes.
Counselor Russell?
Yes.
Counselor Toomey?
Yes.
Counselor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes, request city manager consider exploring funding for another round of Worcester Kids training program using Boys and Girls Clubs of America and the Red Cross curriculum to certify local kids ages 11 to 14, provide child care to little brothers and sisters. Councilor Rose, Wally, and Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you hear me okay? I seem to be spinning a little bit here.
No, we can hear you.
Excellent. The manager and the administration and the Department of Youth and the Department of Children and Families and the Boys and Girls Club and others came together in the fall around supporting individuals or families with older siblings who are taking care of their brothers and sisters in their homes with babysitting courses. It was born out of the idea that there were a lot of 51As and other things that were coming out as it relates to older siblings taking care of their brothers and sisters. The hope, I'm guessing, was that we would get on the other side of COVID and we wouldn't have as much of these things happening. But here we are, still in remote learning, and look like that's going to continue. And so for us to, certify some young people to better take care of their brothers and sisters and to mitigate some of that potential, 50 days and other issues that come about, I think is a really smart investment. I commend the administration for being forward-thinking months ago, and then my hope is that we could find a little bit of funds to continue this for a little while longer, get some more young people certified who are home with their, younger brothers and sisters. There are a lot of people who work in the mental health field or are essential in some ways in their careers or in their jobs. They don't have the privilege of others and working from home and monitoring their kids and their learning and so on. There are older siblings who are taking care of their younger siblings. For example, my 16-year-old is home with my 11-year-old. And so I have the ability to have an older kid or an older sibling take care of her younger sister. That isn't always the case, but I think going through another round of this, I think is, again, just a wise investment and a timely investment, and something that the young people can take with them as a potential resume builder down the road. So again, I commend the administration for partnering with everybody months ago to make this happen for everyone. I just think that given where we're at, I think it makes sense to try to locate some funds to make this happen again. And yes, I am conscious of us being in our current fiscal constraints and asking for another pot of money to be pushed somewhere. But I think, again, this is a very, very worthwhile investment. We've invested quite a bit in our youth in a lot of ways, and I think this is just another very effective way to do that again. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilor King wants to sign on. Also,
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a quick comment too.
Oh, sure, Councilor King.
Yeah, appreciate this order, and just wanted to kind of piggyback on what my colleague mentioned, is that these kids, this isn't about, endorsing any additional parentified duties for any of these children. It's a reality. It's a reality that families are finding themselves in. Even sometimes when the parents are working from home, they need that assistance in dealing with the other children. We have homes of folks with 4, 5, 3, 6 children, numbers of children, where the assistance to the parents is definitely needed. A lot of us might have even been raised that way. But as mentioned, these are life-building skill sets that they'll be able to provide. And I know over the years as a social worker, I've referred people over to the Red Cross and other agencies to do exactly that. And, when you think about our essential workers, you think about, as the council mentioned, the trying to educate kids from home, this goes a long way. So obviously there's a lot of smarter people than myself who've already been pushing this forward. And this would absolutely go a long way. I know a number of families right here in the city that will benefit from this continued process and offer an extension of services immediately. So happy to sign on.
Okay, so we will send that to the manager as amended. A roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mara Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. Next item is 12B, transfer information communication of the previous city council items concerning exemptions. We can have that Mo. One. Roll call. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mara Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. 13A, refer to the Public Works Committee on the roll call. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria? Councilor King?
Yes. Yes.
Councilor Mara
Yes.
Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. If we can take the next, unless anybody has objections, let's do the next couple items together. Collectively, 14A to 14B. The Traffic and Parking Committee, we're going to propose ordinances on the roll call. And also we have 14W to 14F is going to be accepted and adopted on the roll call. And 14Y to 14CC is accepted on the roll call. And 15A is accepted on the roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Caloria?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Mara Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty.
Yes. 16A, Communications Team Manager, transmitting information communication. The fundings received to address the impacts of COVID-19. Anybody on that? Councilor Russell, followed by Councilor Merrill Carlson.
Mr. Chairman, I had a conversation with Mr. McGurthy, and I told him I'd be asking for this, so I just want to ask for it formally. I'm looking for the other side of this, like where the money was spent. If we can, I know it's probably still, we're probably still in the process of spending it, but I'd like to see, this is, some money that came in, but I'm looking for the details on the other side of it where it was spent. I just request in the form of a report. I don't expect them to have it today,
Okay, we will get that item to you. And so we get the formal report. And before voting on it, Councilor Carlson.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So, first of all, I think that, to be honest with you, I think it's great that we were able, excuse me, to get this money because the other thing is I'm really glad that I asked for this report because it shows us some of the good work that's been done with some of this money that we've received. The other question, though, that I had, so first of all, I know when this report was given to us, we still hadn't, according to this report, received any of the federal emergency management monies, FEMA monies. So do we know as of yet what we are going to get? Do we have any? I know that for a piece of time we didn't know when we were going to get this or how much we were going to get. Are we still in that same status at this point? Through the chair to the city manager, I guess, or Mr. McGurthy, whomever is the right person to answer this.
Mr. Manager?
We have not received the FEMA reimbursement, but I'll ask Mr. McGurthy to give you an update on the application and any feedback on when we might hear.
Through the chair, the FEMA process is very definitely a process. It will be an ongoing effort to capture costs and submit costs. The Commonwealth, in recognition of that, has secured a contractor who works with all cities and towns in Massachusetts in order to help prepare submissions, put them in a form that FEMA can then review and approve. We actually did receive word that our first submission, which is a very small submission that was intended to be a model of what it would take to get through FEMA, through the Commonwealth and then through FEMA, was approved. It was a $10,000 request for reimbursement related to PPE in FY20. But there's a significant number of requests that we're working on, broken down by category, by purpose, that we're still working with the state's consultant to prepare and submit to FEMA itself. So this will probably be an effort that will be measured in, a year or two of process as opposed to immediate. Unlike the kind of CARES Act monies, which were time sensitive, the FEMA process goes on for many years after emergencies.
But through the chair to Mr. McGurthy. So I understand that, but I guess what I'm looking for is for the council to be apprised of what, in fact, the potential is of what we're receiving and where these monies are going. So what is it that we're applying for? I think, from at least I'll speak for myself, that when we talk about budget or we're talking about, anything that we need in the city, if there's some dollars that we are receiving for X and we don't have to ask the manager to find that money, we would have no way of knowing that unless we get a continual report on how this is all rolling out, I guess is what I'm saying.
Through the chair, it is definitely a fair point. FEMA is a reimbursement program, so the city has to pay first for whatever activity it is and then seek reimbursement from FEMA. It is also very specific to addressing an emergency. So in terms of the eligibility of efforts, it has to be specifically addressing COVID. It can't be addressing the conditions around COVID. It has to be specifically addressing COVID. So PPE was our first. It was for first responders only. It's not for general staff within the city, but for first responders responding to COVID situations, we're eligible for PPE. So it is a very kind of difficult and time-consuming effort to justify and provide significant backup for various funding sources, but we can absolutely provide updates to council when we submit for FEMA what it is that we're submitting on, and obviously if it is awarded by FEMA, what that award might be.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I had is, in reading through the report, it appears that I know the manager had shared with us that there was a $15 million cost incurred for the Worcester Public Schools. And I thought that I read someplace else in here that are we getting reimbursed for that monies, or is that monies already spent and gone?
Through the chair, if you're talking about the ionization program, which is the approximately $15 million effort to put ionization equipment within the HVAC systems in all city and school buildings, that is being funded through the Coronavirus Relief Fund Municipal Program, the CVRF program. In that case, that fund was actually distributed to the city first. We can then expend it, and then we have to submit post-expense for a report of how it was expended and how it met eligibility. So that is an ongoing effort. The folks at Honeywell who are undertaking the implementation are working now. They've been working since the actual implementation, November, December, into January now, to do that implementation of the equipment in the school and city buildings. But that's something that's underway, and we're being billed as it goes along.
Okay, thank you. And the other question that I had is the DCU Center. So in the report, as it talks about the DCU, it reads in here that the majority of the DCU Center expenses were reimbursed directly to ASM Global, the DCU Center Management Company. Costs associated with the remobilized Fields Hospital will be reimbursed directly to ASM Global via UMass Memorial Healthcare and FEMA and offset city funding obligations. I guess I would ask you to explain that, maybe to be a little clearer on this, because I know that we've asked in the past, because the DCU currently cannot do any events, so we're basically in the red at the DCU. Does any of this money, given the fact that there's two different, it appears, it says that some of this is from, the DCU expenses, reimbursed directly to ASM Global, but then in the second piece of this, it's also saying that UMass Memorial Healthcare and FEMA offset city funding obligations. Could you elaborate on that?
Sure, through the chair. The management and financial transactions related directly to the DCU go through ASM Global, formerly SMG. And so the contract to utilize the DCU as a field hospital was between ASM Global and UMass. UMass paid ASM Global for the expenses of operation. So the utility costs, the management costs that were required during that period were a cost that was charged directly to UMass. UMass then utilized its federal funding sources to repay or to pay that bill from ASM Global. So those dollars were not, they didn't pass through the city, they went directly between ASM Global and UMass. The city does have some small reimbursable expenses related to that, such as police details outside the DCU, things that would be a city cost not associated with the management of the building. So we will be looking for some small reimbursement from the federal government, a FEMA expense, for those costs. But generally speaking, the cost of operation of the DCU is a charge made to UMass repaid by UMass utilizing federal resources. The city, though, because of our arrangement and because of our ownership with the DCU costs that are not covered by revenues coming in have to be paid by the city. The city has to make sure that the building can pay its obligations. And so the operation of the field hospital, while not serving as a revenue generator per se for the city, is an offset to a city expense. Because the costs, the majority of the costs at the DCU are being picked up by the field hospital and UMass, the city then does not have to pay a check over to ASM to cover those costs. And so there is a savings to the city by the field hospital's operation, by the costs that they will cover of the expense of that building, but it is not a revenue source to the city. It is just an offset of a city expense to cover DCU-related costs.
Right. So through the chair to Mr. McGurthy, I guess that's what I was getting at is I understand that it's not a revenue stream for the city, but more importantly is, for example, there's a piece of the utility cost that is covered, whether it be through UMass or through FEMA. So in other words, the DCU does not have to, during these really difficult times, eat that entire bill for the utilities. The other question through the chair to Mr. McGurthy, while we have our police out there, the police detail, you said that, if I heard you correctly, you talked about some reimbursement for the police. I just wonder, why would they not reimburse for the total cost of that police detail at the DCU center?
Mr. McGurthy?
Sure, through the chair. If it is a paid detail above and beyond the obligations of the officer's normal course of duties, it would be eligible for federal reimbursement. And so it would cover that cost of that officer if he or she is, present as a result of the field hospital and doing work on behalf of the field hospital. If it's officers that are in the vicinity that pass through and have other obligations, are part of a budgeted police activity, it would not be eligible. And so that's the type of backup we have to provide to secure eligibility, is the purpose and expense of that officer, why that officer is on site.
Okay, thank you. And again, I, very much appreciate the report because I think it lets us know as a council exactly what is happening and the dollars where they're going. But I also agree with my colleague, Councilor Russell. It would be extremely helpful for a little more detail in the report. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, we'll send that to MO along with Councilor Russell's for more information. Order? Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilmember Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor Rivera? Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Brings us to the end of the meeting. Under suspension, I get an order from Councilor Rivera. On her behalf. She's asked for traffic enforcement of the corner of Main and Cambridge Street. 2 residents from the WHA by cars in the last month there. One has passed away, and one is in critical condition in the hospital. So she's asked for this before, and let's see if we can get some traffic enforcement, traffic plans how to address the situation. in the corner of Cambridge and Main Street. Roll call.
Councilor Bergman?
Yes.
Councilor Calorio?
Yes.
Councilor King?
Yes.
Councilor Merrill Carlson?
Yes.
Councilor President, Councilor Rose?
Yes.
Councilor Rosen?
Yes.
Councilor Russell?
Yes.
Councilor Toomey?
Yes.
Councilor Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Anybody else? Council Wally, did you have anything?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to recognize the frustration many of our residents felt yesterday being without internet access.
Yes. Yeah, Council Wally, you're cutting out here, but
I just want to remind everyone back in the fall, myself, Councilor Toomey,
Council Wally, you've cut out a little bit. So I think you're asking about the Charter Communications issue.
Can you hear me now, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Great. I just wanted to recognize again the frustration many of the residents felt being without internet access. And I wanted to remind the public in the fall, the Urban Technology and Innovation Committee, which I chair, along with Councilor Toomey and Councilor Russell, looked at the report from the Research Bureau about broadband. Of course, we also asked the CIO to look at the feasibility of a municipal broadband. We're meeting again, hopefully at the end of January or early February, to get a response based on those orders to continue talking about the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Wall. Yeah, people, just on that issue, people were pretty upset about that. I got a lot of calls with school kids or business, and maybe you can look at in your committee with the CIO, the idea of, is there a contact we can have, because the school children need to be notified, the school department. We need a conduit to at least notify how we can handle this, what the expectations are. And a lot of numbers, the schools were all up and running, except for no school. A lot of students from their houses weren't up and running. So a lot of people working from home weren't up and running. It was like 10 hours anyway. So 10 to about 7, I think, was down. So yeah, good point. And I think it's hard to get the communication out there too. We can look at that. Councilor Rose?
My issue is a bit separate, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
No, you're up. Go ahead. Yeah, we're all off that one. So, okay.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to say that on Sunday I was alerted to there being a white supremacist insignia or a sign up over on the Millbrook Street Bridge and overpass, and that's not my district. I drove by, saw something up there. I did a little homework on it. I reached out to Councilor Carlson and included her in some correspondence to the administration. The administration then said, this is a state bridge. We should probably reach out to them and have them do this. Long story short, when there's something that is as hateful and spiteful and advertising white supremacy, I'm just hoping that we could reach out to the state and just have a handshake agreement that it's okay for our DPW people to take these things down. It ended up going for hours hanging up there, and me calling this and talking to State Rep John Mahoney and Jim Kirsten from the Mass DOT and others, and ultimately a reporter came over and pulled it down and did whatever with it. But just want to get through some of that red tape should some of these things start reappearing around the city, and not having any barriers to be able to pull these things down urgently. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Councilor King.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to also piggyback on that. If we could get some sort of report back on if there's any reports, or if the city has any intelligence with respect to these sorts of groups. I know there were stickers that were appearing for some of these groups around June 1st, around the time we had our first Black Lives Matter, or second Black Lives Matter demonstration in the city. They were seen in other places. This particular item came to my attention as well. I drove out there to remove it myself. And when I got there, it was gone. And I want to echo what the councilor mentioned. There shouldn't be any red tape that prevents us from taking down hate. Let's act accordingly, and let's make sure that we do exactly that. And if there's any again, any information that can be shared with the council in this regard would be appreciated. If the manager has any information on those sorts of group he wants to share now, that's fine. But if not, report would be great.
Okay, so there's some reports collectively on a roll call. Roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Calorio?
Yes.
Council King?
Yes.
Mayor Carlson?
Yes.
The Rose?
Yes.
The Rosen?
Yes.
Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey?
Yes.
Council Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, with that, we'll go back to 7A. That's in regards to executive session on Tuesday, January 5th. And the motion would be that the City Council convene an executive session at the Tuesday, January 5th, 2020 meeting. The purpose of discussing strategy with respect to collective bargaining negotiations with the IBP 504 with the police officials, because conducting the discussion in open session will be detrimental to the city's bargaining position. The City Council will not reconvene in open session at the conclusion of the executive session. So the motion is to go to executive session, and we will not come back. We will adjourn from the executive session. Roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman?
Council Pally doing so. Council King?
Yeah, is there any possibility we can get like 10 minutes once we do this vote on executive session? No, because I'm at 3% and it's not charging, so.
No, I get you. People need a 5-minute break anyways, 5, 10 minutes. Okay, sounds good, because people have to re-sign on anyway. So about 10 minutes, we'll meet at 10 o'clock, after 10. Okay, roll call.
Council Bergman?
Yes.
Council Calorio?
Yes.
Council King?
Yes.
Council Mayor Carlson?
Yes.
Council Rose?
Yes.
Council Rosen?
Yes.
Council Russell?
Yes.
Council Toomey?
Yes.
Council Wally?
Yes.
And Mayor Petty?
Yes. Okay, we'll see you guys in executive session. Thank you. What's that, Nico?